Melissa? Hey, Melissa?
Let's check.
sitting guy.
Yes. Sure. Let's do that.
Hey, Dave. Excuse me, Dave. For a second, you want to ask me a question? For our Q&A, after you're done, do you want to stand here and I could be right next to you, or do you want to sit there?
Do you have a preference?
We want to do this company thing.
I can sit down, I can dance, I can...
Let's sit down.
Okay.
That way you can join. And that way I can also read whatever questions he's getting on slide.
Sometimes I forget, so you may need to remind me. That's fine.
But Dave, when you go work for the outside.
I think that's good. We actually then the two of you like having a conversation. Perfect.
You ready? Okay. Anytime.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're ready to restart. We're going to move on. Hope you had a good lunch. But you're in for dessert. We're going to now meet David Nadelberg. David, the stage is yours.
Hello. You guys well fed? All right. So hi, I am Dave, and I'm going to learn to use a clicker. And for the past 15 years, I've been on a very unusual mission, to be honest, basically to help people across the world unearth their awkward teenage artifacts, mementos, writings, and encourage them to share them with total strangers. And the reason is this. This is a love letter that I wrote when I was 15 years old. I wrote it to a girl who did not know my name. And yet, despite this, despite this very minor complication, I was convinced, this person was going to, totally change my life. And I was so intimidated by her beauty that I was like, I'm gonna impress the hell out of her. So I wrote this love letter and tried to, inject as much flowery, self-important language as I could, thinking that if I just gave it to her in the hallway as some weird stranger, she would absolutely melt. So the letter began like this. Hello, Leslie. How was your day today? Mine's quite well, I must admit. I do hope that yours is a good one, because what you are about to read may or may not add an extra color to the rainbow at day's end. So it's probably better, based on your reaction, that I did not give that to her. Now, two things happened when I discovered this letter in my 20s. I'd found it many years later, and I read it to myself. So two things happened. First thing, of course, was laughter, same thing that you guys did. Because, first of all, rainbow at day's end, who writes like that? That is not good writing. But the second thing that I experienced was empathy. Because reading that letter, I was struck by a profound sense of connection to my teenage self. Through the words on the page, I wasn't just remembering that time in my life, I was actually reliving it, channeling it. I could feel just how big everything felt, how important everything felt back then. Basically, the letter allowed me to listen to that kid. Just something as simple as that, just to listen to that kid. And as I listened to that kid, suddenly something unusual happened, which was my love for that kid deepened. And it's that connection to your teenage self through empathy that I want to talk to you guys about today. Because sharing your past, whether it's your teenage love letters, your diaries, even just a memory, can be a powerful tool for understanding the emotional lives of kids. So I should mention that at the time that I found this letter, I did not have a lot of empathy for myself. I was in my 20s and dealing with what a lot of people at that age deal with, which is quarter-life crisis, having lots of anxiety attacks. I was dealing with depression, and things were getting kind of bad. I was experiencing, I developed a tic disorder, very similar to what you would know of as Tourette's, except Tourette's, by definition, has to have begun when you were a teenager. And it was first verbal and then motor, and things got so bad that I began hearing voices, very loud, critical, incessant voices that were just critical of everything that I did. So you can imagine just how important that was for me to discover that letter in this moment. And the reason it was important was, again, those two words, laughter and empathy. Because I needed the laughter and I needed to feel that empathy. Now, I share that because none of those symptoms, of course, started in my 20s, as anybody in this room, and pretty much everybody in this room knows about adolescence. Adolescence is a time of life where those kinds of symptoms and patterns really start to develop. So some version of those behaviors and patterns, for me, were already sort of festering once I was a teenager. The kid who wrote that letter had been waiting a long time to feel those things. So curious by this weird, document that I had found, I decided I was going to do the following. I was going to share the letter with my friends. And each time I shared with a friend, and each time they listened, two things happened. First, they laughed, right? Which didn't really make me feel great about myself, but then, without any prompting, they'd do something else, which is they'd start sharing something about their own past, something that probably many of you, when you heard a little bit of that letter earlier, are probably doing just right now, just thinking about whatever crush you had when you were, 15 or something. So without even realizing it, comedy and empathy had struck my friends too. So inspired, in the fall of 2002, I sent out an email inviting people to submit their childhood writings and artwork for a stage show. And I called that stage show Mortified. I thought it would take just a few weeks to put together, but basically 9 months later, the show debuted to a crowd of 80 people, and I was thrilled. Like, this is it. This is success. We're done. Go home now. But in the days after the show, something really unusual happened, which is that I continued hearing from strangers. That email that I had originally sent out soliciting submissions of people's past had actually gone viral. And so I started hearing from dozens of people, then hundreds, eventually numbering in the thousands. People around the country wanted to share their childhood experiences, their own embarrassing teen angst artifacts, with me, or really with other strangers. And this is what happened next. Make it louder.
No matter who we were as kids, whether we were the bully or the captain of the football team or the nerd, we all went through the same pains and struggles.
If you've got something that you feel like you would kill yourself if people found out, there's no way you can hold on to that.
People were a little bit shocked, like, you're gonna read your diary out loud? Why would you want to do that? But the people that don't want to do it love hearing other people do it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mortified.
Dear Diary.
Is it true that girls don't have orgasms the first time?
I just put down my Anne Frank diary. I can really relate to her struggle.
She said, a lot of what I wrote is about the two of you, and we said, what could you possibly have said that would be bad?
Dear Diary, Mom is a dork, a moron, and a geek. I hate her so much. Dad is a bitch and butt crust.
Butt crust? I mean, I don't know what that...
That was her imagination.
That was not one that you got from me, I'll tell you that.
Just be yourself, be real, look out into the audience.
Every person has something in a shoebox in their closet that is embarrassing and raw from their childhood.
There's his nipple, I'm looking right at it. That is making love right there.
We had a show a few hours ago. After tonight's DC event, I'm officially digging out my angsty high school diary to share the shame. We started opening chapters in New York, in Austin, and even Sweden. To this day, we really have no idea what they're saying.
That relationship between the performer and the audience is the heart of Mortified.
How are you feeling? Totally nervous.
I'm gonna go throw up again.
To take what was once your shame and own it and laugh at it, it's essentially the very nature of what Mortified is about.
It's really like a rotor-rooter for the soul. Yeah? Rotor-rooter is what you stick down your drain when it's wrong. Yeah.
So that was a trailer for, let me switch the slide here. So that was actually a trailer for a movie that Mortified released in 2013. This fall, however, Mortified turns 15 years old, which is super weird, because that is roughly the same age that I was when I wrote that stupid letter to a girl who not only has no idea who I am, but has no idea that she inspired any kind of global movement, phenomenon, whatever. Or that I'm speaking in front of a panel of academics based on that crush. But today, Mortified runs, and we are in 20 locations. We operate those stage shows in 5 languages. We have 3 books, including one that you guys all have received walking through the doors right now. Our new book is My Mortified Life. It's actually a journal, so you can write in it. So now you're an author too. We've made radio specials, podcast, documentary. We have a TV series. Our 3rd TV series is actually coming out next year. I'm not supposed to really say the network, but it rhymes with Schmetschmix. And another one that will come out, the other one that will come out will be in Amsterdam, because of course. And then thousands of submissions. All of that, I share that, all that based on just one seemingly insignificant letter. But no matter how many iterations of Mortified have existed over the years, I'm always struck by one constant. It was actually just something I was talking about to somebody from Robin from KQED over at lunch just now, which is if you listen carefully to people's childhood writings, their diaries, love letters, poems, whatever it is, you will inevitably hear one thing, which is the voice of a kid who simply wants to be heard. All you have to do is just listen. And with that, I'm going to let you guys listen to something. This is a clip. This has never been seen before. I mentioned that we're going to have a series coming out next year. This is no one's ever seen really any of our footage from this show. So this is a little bit of a clip from one of the episodes that gives an example of the voice of that kid needing to be heard. Oops. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Naya. When I was 16, I was living in the South, in a community where I didn't quite fit in. I was practically the only black kid in my class, and one year I got a class assignment to write about Black History Month. The following essay is a result of one of the most confusing times in my life. I wish I'd grown up during the fight for civil rights, before black people had stuff and we had to march for everything. I'd have worn my hair in an afro and had a closet full of dashikis. I'd have raised my fist high in the air and chanted uhuru, which I think means freedom in some African language. Instead, I missed the whole civil rights thing and am now the byproduct of what everybody was fighting for, the right to be the only black kid in the classroom. Surprise, surprise. I hate Black History Month. It's the one month out of the year when white people feel comfortable to ask me all sorts of strange, inappropriate questions and treat me as if I'm the spokesperson for the black race. How the hell would I know anything about black people? I can't even dance. I hate the cardboard cutouts of Ben Carson, George Washington Carver, and Thurgood Marshall. I hate the laminated poster of Harriet Tubman leading the slaves to freedom. I hate projects that involve cutting out the shape of Martin Luther King's head and pasting it to a popsicle stick. I bet everyone thought I was going to write about how thankful I am that I was free. And one day, when I was a grown-up, I can vote and come to school with little white children. And most of all, probably, well, I'm so thankful that I have an entire month dedicated to me. Every year, like clockwork, when February rolls around, I'm the mascot of equality. Thanks a lot, Martin Luther King.
So I share that. That's something that Naya, the author of that piece, actually wrote when she was in high school, which I should have clarified. And I share that partially because on the surface, that is nothing that I can relate to, right? I'm a white man, and yet I'm able to laugh at Naya's experience. And I find that through looking at people's teenage diaries and love letters and all their childhood writings, the only way you're actually able to laugh at those things is if on some level the author has let you in a way where you're able to relate to it and connect. And to me, that's all empathy. So that's one of the things that I really love about the artifacts of our past, the power of them. Of course, when you put this need to be heard in modern day context, you start to see really why it's important. So, oops, did we go to the wrong thing? There we go. When you put, we start to see why it's important. I believe we live in an increasingly caustic culture where empathy is in short supply. It's a culture where we're very quick to dismiss people that we disagree with by just giving them labels, giving them names. You've heard them all bandied about, whether it's zealot, snowflake, racist. The list goes on, as if those labels are enough, right? We do not live in a culture where we encourage dialogue. We do not encourage empathy. In my opinion, we are facing. I believe we are facing an empathy crisis. We encourage shouting and demonization and grandstanding, but people need to have their struggles acknowledged, no matter how misguided we think those struggles are. And when those people don't feel heard, that's when problems arise. So I put that in, I provide that context because I believe the same thing applies to teenagers now, always, but now more than ever. Because if you look into the past, you'll hear it loud and clear. Teenagers crave empathy. And I believe showing that empathy is vital for any adult who deals with adolescents on a regular basis. And when I say vital, I do mean that literally. Because when you consider the mental health impact that adolescents or the adults that they've become, when you consider the mental health issues that impact adolescents or the adults that they become, I can tell you firsthand, empathy has the power to save lives. So how does one, do a better job of exercising empathy? In the case of a teenager, you've got to know where that kid is coming from. Not just what they're doing, but where they're coming from. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, it's also the most fun way to do that, is actually by looking at your own past to channel your teenage experience. So what follows is Mortified's unconventional method for showing empathy to teenagers. So right now I'm going to assign a little bit of a homework assignment. I like that I'm surrounded by a bunch of teachers, and now I'm going to give you guys homework. So just take out any kind of writing utensil you want. You're not going to be asked to share anything. This is just for you. It's just for you. And that could be your phone. And if you're too lazy, just, remember it in your head. I'm going to give you guys a journal assignment. I'm going to let you have a conversation with your teenage self. So now that you've taken out your writing utensils, there's 2 steps, basically, in terms of connecting to your teenage self in this way. And using yourself as a test subject in terms of showing empathy to a teenager. So first, I want you to change the slide. First, I want you to listen to that kid. And in Mortified speak, we call that sharing the shame. So just, that means you just share something from your past. That could be anything. It could be, of course, an old diary, a song you wrote when you were 14 and you thought you were going to be the next Tupac or Kurt Cobain or whatever. It could be a homecoming photo. And of course, given that nobody in this room has brought any of their childhood artifacts here, I do have some good news that you don't even need to have a physical memento. You can literally just use memory, answering a writing prompt about your past. And in fact, if you like it and you want to do it more, you can find more writing prompts. I'll give you the writing prompt in a second, but you can find more writing prompts in our new book, My Mortified Life, which is actually a book designed, it's a journal filled with questions explicitly designed to reconnect you to your teenage past and sort of redefine your relationship to your past self. Okay, so for you guys, I would like you to describe, and just take a minute for yourself, to describe your first kiss. Just something as basic as that. Whatever comes to mind, just write anything about it. I see some of you smiling. Some of you are in horror. And for those who've totally wiped it from their memory, if you're not interested in that, you could describe the number one thing you wanted for your birthday growing up, but never got. So your first kiss, or that birthday gift your parents were too much of jerks to not give you. So I'll give you a second to reflect. And just write down whatever you want. There are no wrong answers, and you won't be asked to share. I didn't provide Jeopardy music, but I have a lovely singing voice. All right. Think about how slobbery it was, how gross it was, how your head's bonked. Graceless. Okay, so you've just written a little bit about that. That's fine. You don't need to write the novel. So the second thing to do, though, first you listen to that kid, and the second thing to do, show that kid they matter, just by asking a series of investigative questions, such as, what did that kid want? Why did that kid want it? Why did that kid really want it? What stood in their way? What lengths did that kid go to get it? So just think about that in terms of what you just wrote down or whatever you just conjured up in your brain, and answer just some of those questions. You probably won't have time to answer all of them, but just answer one or two of those for yourself. What did that kid want? Why did they want it? Why did they really want it? What stood in their way? So by unearthing your past and answering these questions, you are unlocking ways to relate to that kid, to show that kid respect and acknowledge that their needs matter. So I encourage anybody to just go home, dig up something from your past, even if it's just a photo or a memory, and share it with just one person in your life, because that conversation, that awkward conversation you'll have with either them or your awkward teenage self, will teach you a surprising amount of things about yourself, and it's also really good practice for your next interaction with a teenager. Thank you. Oh.
Dave, why don't you join me?
Sure.
Join me here for squeezing in a couple of questions.
Right there, right?
And then after that, we're going to move on to panel 3. So my answer to your quick questions are a dog. You didn't say it had to be another human being. That's why I wanted to kiss. I kissed the dog. When I
was it a good kiss?
Well, let's not get into that. Yeah, I kissed my dog, and the dog just ignored me. And a flamethrower. I wanted my parents to give me a flamethrower. Don't read too much into that, but it's a weird time.
Yeah, okay.
Here's my question.
I'm just glad you didn't want to kiss the flamethrower.
Well, never mind. So we've heard this morning some amazing stuff about identity, about the brain, the teenage brain.
Yeah.
How does some of that fit into this desire to unearth yourself from when you were 15?
Well, sure.
I mean, kind of see if you can connect the dots there.
Well, I think it was Nancy who spoke about identity at the beginning, if I'm not mistaken. And I was really, quite honestly, struck by, I was like, wow, I feel like a lot of the things that I deal with from a purely entertainment basis, like as a non-scientist, I'm hearing echoed in a lot of these speeches. There was a speech earlier today that dealt with, the importance of empathy, and so I believe, I don't know if this fully answers your question, but I really do believe like there's actual like rigor and value in looking at your past, because I think it's a really great way to understand one's identity and the evolution of one's identity. Because like I was 17 different personalities if you look at various things that I wrote as a kid. Like I tried to be a hippie in one moment, so I wrote some like lovey-dovey flowery poem, and then I tried to probably be a punk in some other moment, and
Identity crisis.
Yeah.
Let's take a couple of questions that I find this one really interesting. What do current adolescents say when they see Mortified?
Well, typically, Mortified is known as stage show, and typically adolescents don't see our stage show because we're often in clubs that have age limits. But with our podcast, as well as we have a movie right now called Mortified Nation on Netflix. That was the trailer you watched. And I would say the majority of feedback that we get about the movie on Twitter winds up being from teenagers. It's really weird. And they love it. And I'm always terrified. I don't want someone to watch it and feel like we're mocking their experience. I want them to feel sort of loved and less alone.
Yeah. Another interesting question. Thank you for sharing your story. What do mortified presenters say after they share?
I need a drink.
Or I can't believe I just did that, right?
Yeah. In fact, the number one thing when people come to us, our show is curated. It's not an open mic project. But it's not based on like, I don't care how talented you are. So if you're a comedian, it doesn't matter. But the number one thing I say when people come in to a session with us is I say, earmark something you wrote when you were a kid or drew when you were a kid that makes you say the phrase, I can't believe I thought like that. I can't believe I wrote like that. And so that comment that you're saying happens after the fact, after they get on stage. It's actually the thing that, for me, filters them onto stage.
Yeah. One final question I'll squeeze in. They say that the new technologies we have today, people tethered to their gadgets, provide to some degree anonymity.
Yeah.
You can say stuff and not have to say who you are. And yet, much of this is about self-discovery. Are those two forces at odds with each other, that you have something like Mortified where you're going public with stuff that's embarrassing or just strange, but you also have technologies now that are kind of conditioning young people to be anonymous and to say whatever the heck they want?
Well, I mean, diaries are inherently a very private medium until the advent of, say, LiveJournal or various blogs. But I don't know if I can speak to the anonymity, which I can't believe I pronounced that word correctly. I always screwed up. But what I can speak to is the technology, because a thing a lot of people often wonder is, does a project like this get phased out due to Snapchat and Facebook and all of that? And the answer is, for years we've been doing digital technology. Like we have people reading their GeoCities blogs, and their emails are constantly in our show. In our upcoming TV show, there's AIM chats from the 90s. As long as you are a teenager and you are dealing with all the neuroses and craziness, you need an outlet. And there are some that will save it. There are some that won't, there's a few people that won't write stuff, but there's plenty that do, and then there's just a few little weirdos who will save it into adulthood, and we're the home for that.
David, thank you. Big applause for David. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Moving on, we're going to go on to panel 3. And again, I'm going to tell you who they are and then have them all come up at the appropriate time without me having to interfere again. So first up is going to be Renee Wiley. Second, Veronica Palmer and Anjay Bouget. And finally, Tracy Hill and Joan Smith. Joe and Smith. Renee, Wiley, you've got the floor.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. David, I want to make sure I get that address because I'm sure I've got my angst-filled diaries at home. I'll just send them to you. I'm not even sure I want to read them. Well, my name is Renee Wiley. I am from Charlotte County, and it is in Florida. I've been with Charlotte County for the last 28 years. I've been a classroom teacher. I have been a lead teacher, where I got to coach teachers and do professional development. And I am starting on a new journey in Title I. It's my beginning of my second year of being part of that team. And so as part of my journey, I'm here today. So thank you for being on my journey. Oop, it helps if you push the right button. So this is Charlotte County, little red space. Yes, we are fine. Irma came through here and up the middle of the state. So yes, we had wind damage, but nothing compared to what the Keys had, nothing compared to what the middle of our state had. So we were very fortunate and very blessed. Charlotte County has about 20 schools. Not about, it has exactly 20 schools, I apologize. 13 of which are Title I. So it's part of my job to help them with compliance, make sure that they're meeting all the Title I requirements, to go out and do that professional development for our parents. And I say professional development for parents because we all know that parents and families, that is a full-time job. All right, so why a parent survey? Well, Title I requires it? Great. But my team and I, after talking about this, decided that we wanted to go beyond just compliance. Compliance is great, check the box, move on. We wanted it to be meaningful, and that was really, really important to us. We, as a school system, a lot of times, I don't know if you all can kind of relate to this, but you get so much that you gotta do that if you've got the box checked and you can move on, you're like, yeah, yes, okay? Well, this is one of those things where saying, yes, we've done it, wasn't enough. So, we wanted to have something compliance-friendly. We also wanted something user-friendly. And this is where we came across Panorama. Looking into it, well, holy cow, it's user-friendly. In the past, we'd always done a survey. The survey was the front and the back of a Scantron sheet. Not a problem, can do that. In tiny type, in lots of paper. We have 13 schools that are going to be Title I. We're going to send out 200, yes, 200 surveys to every school. How many of you know that I have more than 200 students at every one of those schools? Now I'm not hearing from all my families, or not even giving them the opportunity to be heard. Well, not me personally, but as a district. But anyhow, moving on, we wanted to hear more. So, instead of having all of those surveys stuffed into envelopes with a pencil that had to go out to the schools, that had to be delivered to the families, that had to be collected back, had to come back to our office to be scanned, and then run through the computer, run through the whole software. It was so labor intensive, just an enormous lift that with the cuts that we've had in our district, we do not have the people to do that lift anymore. When I took this position 2 years ago, I took the 2 positions. Our Title I person retired, and so did our data person. So I said, oh yeah, I'll volunteer for that. I'm still not sure what I was thinking, but I do love what I'm doing. So it's been a fun ride. So we've had Title I changes. We've decided we want something more than just compliance, and this is where Panorama was filling that empty void. Whoops, yes, right place, sorry. So in the spring of 2017, 10 elementary schools decided we were going to take this, and 2 of our middle schools. Now, if anybody else notices, this only adds up to 12. Is anybody keeping count? Is anybody still awake and in their lunch coma? Not in their lunch coma. Just checking. So we had 1 high school that is Title I. They are an alternative high school, and they have a difficult time getting their parents in. And what they said to me was, we don't want a parent survey. We want a student survey. So I talked with my Panorama team and I said, they don't want a parent survey. They want a student survey. And they're like, we can work with you. So that's why this number only adds to 12. So about 7,900 students are in these 12 schools. Every family had an opportunity to participate in the survey. It's a big difference than 200 per each school. So I was super excited. I'm like, yes, we're gonna get all these results. And we kind of did. We got almost the same number we normally did when we sent home the paper in the envelope with a pencil out through the computer and the software. So right now, what I'm doing as a county and with the team is, what can we do to improve to get our numbers doubled for next year? I'm already looking at it. I was like, oh, gotta do this, double it up. But my schools were very excited that they got a similar number, that they had the opportunity for anybody who wanted to participate. And one of the things that really excited my leadership in the schools was the fact that the reports were easy to access. They were easy to read and understand. They could share it with the teachers, they could share it with families. It was something that made them happy. Imagine that, data that makes you happy. That's a big thing for them, okay? But we really wanted to make sure that when we did this survey, we had input from our families, because there is not going to be student success without input from our families, without support from our families, okay? So, 2016-17 was a year of our firsts. It was the first time Charlotte County had ever done an all-online survey. It was the first time we invited all our families to participate. And it was the first time for us using a third-party person to do that online part. So change. We all know how much we love change. If you love change. Yeah, I'm not, oh good, somebody's with me, okay. I do, I like change. I don't do well doing the same thing twice. So I'm glad I've got 2 of you out there that like change, thank you. I'm not alone. Sorry, 3rd grade moment. Anyhow, one of the things we made sure of last year was that when our parents were going to take the survey and they said, I don't have technology, I don't have access to the internet. We have that problem in Charlotte County. We made sure to open up our computer labs and invite them in. Can't come in the morning? Come in the afternoon. Can't come in the afternoon? Come in the evening when you're picking your student up from after school care. We tried to be very flexible. We want to make sure that this year we want to make sure that we promote that even more. We think that's going to be a big help for us. It's one of those things that, when you look back and you see, well, what did we do really well? What didn't we do well? I think we need to promote that a little bit more, so I'm super excited about that. For our spring survey, we're going to do the same topics again. Family engagement was one of our topics. Barriers to being engaged. School climate and school survey. Those were the topics. And from each topic, we did questions about that. And that was also a change. When we did the old survey, it was 37 to 42 questions, 1 through 42, and we're done. There was no grouping, there was no organization to it. And now we can see, oh, well, we did pretty good. Our barriers to family engagement. We had 85% of our respondents say, hey, we're not having any problems with that. It was a favorable response. We're like, yay, celebrate the success. School safety, 86% of us, we're happy. We got a favorable response. And again, yay, there was, much rejoicing. Monty Python, sorry. But then, school climate, okay, we can do better. But we all decided we're going to focus right there. Because, we do a short amount of yay, and then we look at what didn't we do right? What did we do wrong? And that's something that educators always do. Very quick yay, let's look at the bottom quartile. Let's look at what we're doing wrong. What can we do to improve? So after we did some yaying, we looked at what are we going to do to improve? So one of the nice things was when the survey results came out, what I was able to do was meet with each school's leadership team. And those leadership teams ranged from just being the principal himself or herself to having the principal, the assistant principal, the lead teacher, the academic coach, and some parents. So the whole team size would vary school to school. But I got to sit down and really talk with them about the results. Because as you know, every school is a different microcosm of a universe, so to speak. So they've all got their own different thing going. The middle school that's struggling with family engagement, or the elementary school that's struggling with family engagement, have different aspects that they're struggling with. So we looked at family engagement a little closer. A lot of fierce conversations are starting to be happening in Charlotte County, and I'm very excited about that. Why did we fall down in this particular area? Was it the questions? Was that where we were struggling? So we started to look at the data a little closer, looking at, is it just one area? And it kind of jumps out at you. It's the middle school. Not that the elementary was doing great, but our middle school really fell down. And we got to start asking, is this because we don't know what we're doing? Is this because our parents are like, oh, yes, they're in middle school, I'm done? No, of course they're not done. They know that. We know that. Maybe the kids know it. I think they do. Anyhow, so the middle schools are really taking this data to heart. They're really looking, what can we do? One of our middle schools has truly taken this to heart, and they wanted to ask more questions, and they wanted the survey again. They're like, no, we're not waiting until the spring to do this again. We want it this fall. So starting Monday, there they go. They are in the trenches. They're going to be promoting this, getting the word out. They want to double what they've got in their responses and see if they can improve anything. So they're looking. It'll be interesting to see how they come back. One of the questions was a real problem for them. It had to do with teacher meetings, parent conferences. And they had 52% that said, yeah, we never met with our teachers this year. That number alarmed them. So it was a wake-up call. But that's a good thing. They're now aware of it. They can now address it. So when their teams meet, whoops, nope, we're in the right place. Anyhow, when their teams met, they decided, you know what? We need a different time for our parent conferences. This after school, before school, during my planning time as a teacher, that's when I'm going to meet with my parents. They're looking to take their work day when they usually typically work on report cards, they work on lesson plans, teaming. They're asking parents to come in. They're asking parents to come in, have student-led conferences, have that one-on-one. Maybe you need to come in at 6 a.m., maybe you need to come in 4 p.m., but come in, have something. So, every year we have our parent-family engagement planning teams meet. This is anywhere between 5 and 12 people for each school that get together as a large group, come up with ideas, and share their successes for the school year, share ideas for what they're going to do the next year. This is one of our most powerful times. So, and I'm wrapping up because I know I'm over, and I apologize. This is who I am. This is how you can find me. This is how you can find Charlotte County. It has been an honor to be a part of this. I'm glad to see nobody fell asleep. Parent surveys and technology, I think, is the way we've got to go. Because if you think about the time you spend on your device, even just today, checking your email, checking your tweets, checking your Facebook statuses, our parents are there too. And that's where we want to go. We want to make sure that we embrace the technology and use what's out there. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
You're all set. You're all set.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Hi. Thank you. My name is Veronica Palmer, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Rise Colorado.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anjali Buzel, and I'm a student leader with Rise Colorado.
So thank you so much to the Carnegie Foundation and to WGBH for inviting us to be here today. We're going to be talking about our innovative model and innovative approach to family engagement and family empowerment on the ground with families in Aurora, Colorado, which is right outside of Denver, and it's the most diverse school district and city in the state of Colorado. So at RISE, our mission is to educate, engage, and empower low-income families and families of color to rise as change agents for educational equity. We do that with the theory of change that those most impacted by the inequity that exists must lead the change for themselves. So if you look at this, women led the suffrage movement, Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta led the farm workers movement, and Martin Luther King Jr. and African Americans led the civil rights movement. So we must ask ourselves, who's most impacted by educational inequity? It's low-income families and families of color, therefore they must be the ones to lead the movement with us alongside and behind them as allies. So even though I'm a Latina who's been impacted by the opportunity gap myself, I've still reached a certain level of financial, education, and political capital to where I'm no longer impacted. So I must remove myself to make sure those most impacted have their voices heard and uplifted. And I got involved in this work really because of my grandmother, Alberta. So my grandmother grew up in the projects. She was in a gang. She still actually has many of her gang tattoos to this day because she wants to remember everything she's overcome in life. She got pregnant with my dad in high school and dropped out and went on welfare. She woke up one day and said the only way to end the cycle of poverty and violence was through education. So it took her many years, but as a single mom of 3, she had my dad, my uncle, and my aunt. She was 28. My grandfather was incarcerated in prison. She crossed the street from the projects to Auraria campus in downtown Denver and enrolled herself in a GED program, then a bachelor's program, and then got her master's at DU in social work and became a social worker for Denver Public Schools for 25 years. Thank you. So my grandmother single-handedly showed me the power of family engagement. When families know how to navigate the school system, when families know how to be their child's #1 teacher and advocate, anything and everything is possible. Because she went to college, my dad went to college, he's also a social worker in Denver Public Schools. I went to college, and now my 2 beautiful Afro-Latino children, Trey and Aviana, will go to college. So when families can navigate the system, when families know that the school system is working for them, and the school system will support their children to receive the excellent education they deserve, everything is possible and anything is possible for our families. So that's why I co-founded RISE Colorado. So at RISE, as I mentioned, Aurora is the most diverse school district and city in the state. So let me break down some demographics for you. We're an official refugee resettlement city. We have families from 130 countries speaking over 150 different languages. We are 56% Latino, so majority of our families are Spanish speaking, majority of our families are undocumented. We also have 17% white families, 18% African American, and all the rest refugees and newly arrived immigrants. So when I say diverse, I mean in all respects. And this picture is just a little glimpse of how diverse we are in Aurora. In our model of educate, engage, and empower, we are different in that we educate families within schools. So myself and majority of my staff were former teachers and college professors. So we know how to get into schools to teach teachers about the best practices of family engagement, just like Dr. Mapp talked about earlier today. It is so important that our teachers understand, and our school leaders, that family engagement is a must-have and not a nice-to-have, and have the systems and infrastructure to support that. We also have a diversity, equity, and inclusion series with our school leaders and teachers that we piloted last year, where we talked to teachers about race, class, and privilege. Knowing that majority of our school staff are white females, it's very important that we talk about privilege and whiteness and how biases and archetypes could come in to how they teach our students, our Black and brown babies and Native and Asian babies. So it's very important that they understand the importance of culturally responsive teaching and culturally responsive pedagogy so that they're doing their best to teach their students and engage their families. So we have a family engagement program series where we actually teach families the data around the opportunity gap, what's happening on a national and local level, not to disempower them, but to empower them to understand their role in overcoming the opportunity gap and what's happening and how it could turn the tide in the statistics to ensure their children no longer become a statistic of a dropout or not getting to and through college. And then we engage families. We teach families the skills and tools of community organizing. So back on the slide I showed you a bit ago, all of those movements, the suffrage movement, the farm workers movement, and the civil rights movement all had an organizing element to it. And Dr. Mapp even mentioned the importance of parent and family organizing. So at RISE, we do it very holistically. We don't just engage the parents or the adults, we also engage the students because it's important for them to have a voice. If you think about it, in the civil rights movement, when Ella Baker was organizing the youth with the sit-ins, with the freedom rides, that was really what helped turn up the civil rights movement when the youth stepped in. So for us, in the movement for educational equity, it's very important that youth and families are organizing together in and outside of schools to really create systemic change. And in our last phase of empowerment, that's where we really want to see our theory of change come full circle, where families are no longer the objects, but the architects of policy, where families are running for school board, city council, and they are the decision makers. So yes, that they have a seat at the table, but they're also able to dismantle the table and build a new table that is truly equitable, where they are building policies that are reflective of and responsive to the community, that really actually work for them, so that they're no longer invited in at the 11th hour to testify, wear a t-shirt, hold a sign about a bill, but it's a bill that they created that'll actually work for them, their families, and their community. Our current impact to date is that RISE has educated over 2,000 families, impacting 3,000 school-age children about the opportunity gap. We've had over 6 organizing wins at the school and district level. Our families have already created 2 district-wide policy changes, and we have over 15 parents sitting on school and district level decision-making bodies, becoming those future leaders, elected leaders and policymakers that we desperately need within education. And now I'm going to turn it over to Anjali, who's going to share her perspective as a student leader with RISE.
Thank you. Okay. Crossing over seas, oceans, and countless rivers, we landed in the United States on August 26th of 2015. 19 years of our memories as a family got packed in 5 suitcases. We said bye to our family, relatives, friends, and loved ones with tears rolling down our eyes. We reminisced about all the time we spent together and our unstoppable love and support for each other. I said bye to my sweet home Kathmandu and my mother Nepal. After 2 days of travel, I found myself in this beautiful country as a newly born baby who does not know how to talk, walk, and even not familiar with the food she is gonna eat. When I first stepped into my new American school, I was reborn. Being in a very new place and a new community, I faced challenges like getting bullied, hearing bad words from other students, and most of all, trying to get adjusted in my new community. The day I found RISE and met their team members, my life was flipped. I started doing good work, my days were becoming awesome. I met other families from Nepali community and got to spend time with families who are from different cultures and speak different languages. Immigrant and refugee families in the Aura community were stressing out about the new administration and did not know if their kids were safe in school or not. And they were also worried about their immigration status. As soon as we saw these sad faces, we all started thinking of a way that we could help them and get their hope back again. We sat together as a community and came up with a resolution that says everyone deserves a safe and inclusive school community regardless of their documentation status. I was a student speaker for a resolution. I shared my experiences from a student's point of view. I helped the board members, superintendent, district officials, and community members understand that all students deserve a safe and inclusive learning environment regardless of immigration status. Due to our hard work, dedication, and organizing efforts, we were able to pass the resolution with a 7-0 vote. Thank you. Some of my friends and I worked on the resolution together. We gave our best ideas, interpreted for families, and helped getting families involved in this important community work. We are all English language learners and give our best advice as students. It is important to empower students and have student voice within all family engagement efforts. During and after the resolution campaign, our students felt powerful and like we can make a great change. As English language learners, we need our families to receive interpretation and translations from our school. For parents who don't speak English, they should be able to get all notifications from English in their native language, so that they could get connected to their school and know how their kids are doing in school. It is very important to build a strong relationship between families and school members or teachers. If students cannot speak English, they should get a mentor or someone who speaks their language to help them in school with their work and language development. Families need to be invited into school regularly to see what their children are learning in school so that they know how to support them at home. This is my friends and I celebrating our achievements. We gathered together in a beautiful multicultural celebration. RISE organized this award ceremony to thank us and our community for our courage and hard work. On the resolution, yes, we were able to bring their beautiful smiles and hope back. We've been successful in our work with RISE supporting our wants and needs for change in education. Now I'm in college, and I really want to see all of my friends, whether they are non-English speakers, immigrants, refugees, or citizens, to be successful. I want to see them succeed in school and their families to be proud of them because families want the best for their children. Students and youth are rising stars and backbone of society. Their hands, their support, and their involvement are the most important factors for a sustainable development of a nation. So we do not want them to stay in the back doing nothing because we know they have that fire inside their soul to educate, engage, and empower the whole world and to create incredible change. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We are going to move on to the rest of panel 3, but first, panel 3 is next. Haley. Yeah. Right. What about Haley, though? Sorry. After that. All right. Makes my job easier. Panel 3, the rest of panel 3. Tracy and Joanna are next. That's okay. Tracy Moore and Jack Moran and Joasha Moran. Now I'm confused. Are we?
We're going to introduce Tracy Hill and Joanne Smith.
Okay, Tracy Hill and Joanne Smith. You've got the stage. Sorry about that. I need some coffee.
They're making sure I'm hooked up. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. I think I might need a little bit of coffee, too. I'm getting that time of the day. So thank you all for coming today to the WGBH EdForum and talk about family engagement as it relates to middle school scholars. My name is Tracy Hill. I'm the Executive Director of Family and Community Engagement for the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. And I also have with me one of our parents, a very active and wonderful parent. Her name is Joanne Smith, and she'll be talking to you very shortly. Just a little bit about the work that we're doing in Cleveland. We have made it intentional. I will say that we have a very intentional focus on family engagement in our district, understanding that we cannot move our district, the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, without engaging our family in authentic activities that build their capacity to support student achievement. And we have built a college-going culture in our district. We have, in the last 7 years, been able to raise our graduation rates from a dismal 52% in 2011 to this last year, 72.1, 19%. So that is a phenomenal lift in the city with the second highest level of childhood poverty. Again, we are endeavoring to do a lot of capacity building and working collaboratively with our parents. And as we have increased our graduation rate, we've also increased the number of our students who are going to college. So we had to ponder, we had to think about how do we create a college-going culture in our families when very few of them have actually gone to college. And that's why we created in 2013 our Parent University College Tours. I'm going to show you a little video clip on what that looks like. I always talk about parents having a toolkit. And some of our parents have the tool belt and they only have a hammer. And then you have the ones that have that big bench in the garage with every tool that you could possibly imagine. My philosophy of working with parents and students is that we have to move away from a deficit-based model and really look at what parents bring to the table. You know, even if it's a hammer, at least they have a hammer, you know? Cleveland, as many people know, is one of the poorest cities in our nation. We have about 40,000 students in our schools. We have around 25% of our students are identified with special needs, and 100% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. I have a lot of friends who live in Cleveland, who graduated from Cleveland schools. They always speak about the old days, once upon a time in Cleveland. We had this phenomenal school district, and where is it now? You know, everyone wants to paint the parents in Cleveland with a very broad stroke, a brush, a paintbrush, and say, all your parents, they don't care, or all your parents are illiterate, or all your parents are uneducated. But every parent that I've encountered cares deeply about their child's education. There's not a parent that I know that wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to really screw this kid up, you know? Neither one of my parents went to college, but they always stressed the importance of education, as well as some of my other family members. And my mom, you know, she had 6 kids, so she wasn't like the PTA mom that came up to the school every day. She worked sometimes 2 jobs to take care of our family. So I just knew that I wanted to do better, and I just feel personally, you know, because of my background, from where I came from, my childhood, having those adults in your life that really push you to do the best and be the best that you can be, that you have, every kid needs a champion, and their parents are their champions. So as I was looking for colleges with my daughter, I was, you know, thinking, wow, you know, oftentimes when school districts take students to universities, we take our kids to colleges for bus tours. The only people who are on the buses are the kids, right? So what about the parents? So we organized our first tours last spring as an extension of our Parent University program. And one of the things that they said is they don't want people to do things to them or for them, but with them. So, you know, we take our parents with us on this journey. Some of our parents have not been to college. They've never been to a college setting and seen the dormitories, eaten in in the dining hall, gone and sat in the classroom. And this is what we do on these trips.
Like even just the program and then.
There was a parent there. She was with her daughter. I thought they were sisters, and they were skipping around the campus and holding hands. And so I went up to the 2 young ladies, I'll say, and I asked. I said, "Oh, are you sisters?" And she said, "No, I'm her mom." And I said, "Oh, what did you wear on the last trip?" She says, "Yeah. You know, I had my daughter when I was 15, and I never had this opportunity. So when I saw these tours were available, I said, I'm going to sign up for each and every one of them because I want her to see the life. I want her to have the life that I didn't have and have the opportunities. I want to do that. I want to give my children, my kids, opportunities that I didn't have so that they can be the best person that they can be and be ready for the world that we can only imagine is coming." I think I'm pushing the right button. If you can advance to the next one. Okay, I'm sorry. So, as a result of the college tours, we've had about 1,200 families, students and their parents come on our tours. We start the tours in 8th grade and we go until 12th grade. And surprisingly, the majority of the parents and students who come on our trips are 8th grade parents and early high school parents. And one of those parents is with me today. Her name is Jawan Smith. She currently has a sophomore at Thiel College, and she attended many of our Parent University College tours, and then started her own consulting business where she works with parents to help them get their babies to college. I introduce you to Jawan Smith.
Good afternoon. I'm Jawan Smith, and as she stated, I am a parent. I'm an alumni and a parent of the Cleveland schools. And in middle school, my daughter comes and she says, yeah, I want to go to college. I want to be a veterinarian. So I'm like, oh my goodness, of all the degrees you decide on, you pick one of the most expensive ones. So as a single mom, I'm like, yeah, there's no way I can afford this, but she happened to be a phenomenal athlete. So I'm like, okay, we're using sports, we're going to college. We're going to make this happen. So I looked on the website of the Cleveland School District, and they had these bus tours. So I said, okay, it's free. Yeah, we're doing this. It's going to be free. We're getting on this bus. So we started going on those bus tours, and then, unbeknownst to me, my dyslexic child ended up graduating 6th in her class. So she earned, thank you, she earned an academic scholarship. But in the process of me going through all of that, learning about the college applications, the scholarships, learning about FAFSA, teaching myself about the NCAA process, which was just so overwhelming, I had so many other parents coming to me asking, well, how did you do this? How did you figure this out? So this led me to doing work in the community. I do individual consultations. I'm in the school district, and I'm just teaching about empowerment. I've heard that word so many times today about empowering the parents. And I feel like there's a hole there that needs to be filled. And I think so long as parents know things that are available and can find those resources, then they can be in a position to help their children be successful and not only get across the high school graduation stage, but get to college and then cross the college stage. So long as we are empowering our families, and I'm out in the community, as I stated, I do individual consultations. I'll even come to your house. If you don't have a car, I will come to you and we're gonna sit at the table and put a plan together. And I really think it needs to start in middle school, because that's when we started. I learned about budgeting, financing. There's so many things that you can do starting in middle school, but if no one has informed you, then you don't know that those opportunities are available. So I've made it a mission of mine to help every baby get to college. So I don't care where you stay at, I'm gonna get in my car and I'm gonna come to you in your school. I go to churches, I'm in the community centers. I've even had consultations in the park. Wherever we can sit down and actually go over a plan to teach these parents things that are available for them, because it's not that they don't want their children to go to college, they really don't know how to get them there. So the college tours, I stress that with all parents, because I feel that how would they know that if it's for them if they've never even seen what it looks like? A lot of our children in the area where I'm from, college was not a topic for discussion. So we didn't know what a college looked like. So for my daughter to actually get on a campus and actually see, you know, it's people here that look like me. It's possible for me to come here and feel comfortable. That's so important for a child. You can't just sit them on a plane and have them show up at a school and expect them to be comfortable, because they'll be on the LBJ plan that leave by January. And that's definitely not a good thing. So it's so important to make sure you visit those campuses and ask the great questions. You know, don't just look at the cafeteria. Go look in the corner and see if it's crud in the corner. See if those trash cans stink. See what the bathroom look like in the dorm. Ask those important questions. Find out what they offer for free. My daughter's school give them free laptops. Like, that was a selling point for me. Free laundry. Yeah, we on our way. No quarters. So you have to ask those type of things when you go on these visits. So I think it's so important to go get on those campus visits. If your school offers it for free, hop on the bus and let's get our babies to college.
The one really key thing to remember is that all of our families, no matter what obstacles they have in place, all of our families have hopes and dreams for their students. And it's up to us to help collaborate and partner with them to make those dreams come true. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. What I love about this is these are the folks in the trenches. These are the folks who have so much to teach us. We're going to move to yet another poet. Her name is Haley, And she is going to read a poem titled The Day Our Rights Died. Haley, and by the way, after that, we will have a short 5-minute break. But Haley, it's all yours.
When you walk into a high school that has spent thousands of dollars improving their locker rooms, remember there is a school that does not have enough textbooks for a single class. Now, one of these schools is in white picketed town, and the other in the downtown area of an industrialized city. Could you guess which one is located where? I am enrolled in the school that is without enough paper for its students, which just means I am enrolled in the school in a downtown area of industrialized city. But the day I realized this was when the checks stopped coming, when the ceilings caved and we had to duck from the collapsing plaster. Because when the government tells you that you are not worthy of the extra funding because the test scores are not meeting the standards, you realize that they look at you as an investment before a student, the future economy before the future generation, and you wonder if this is a rerun episode of segregation where Congress misplaced your rights and placed a pedestal under the whites because they seem to think that education is no longer a privilege, is no longer entitled but a privilege. And it was easy to use us city kids as scapegoats for a failing system when it keeps our brains encaged with funding under lock and key. And we started to see our aspirations vaporize along with the resources. And we realized students from our block were set up to fail, receive D's instead of degrees, become a number rather than learning about them. And we become the byproduct of evolution of a rural kingdom and the deterioration of an urban village. But we were never asking you to shred that privilege, rather only asking our system to extend it, to give us a chance, instead of believing that we were bound to open a cell instead of a test booklet, or setting up a penitentiary instead of a classrooms. And to the senators holding money over our heads, a colored scholar is nothing but another oxymoron. But we sit in rows, walk in single file all the same, pick up our number 2 pencils, bubble in answers all the same, reserve our spot on the honor roll, and receive perfect attendance all the same. But we are the ones who keep playing games not rigged in our favor, always rolling the loaded dice, following a handbook that seems to have loopholes when you're white because being Caucasian means blue caps and diplomas are birthrights. But when it comes to a student who looks something like me, they'll tell us the same story, that if you work hard, you'll just have the same success as the rest of us. But when inner city students are not equipped with the same tools as white suburbia, what do we tell them? What do you tell the kids that are more likely to reach the poverty line before the standardized test requirement? What do we tell the ESL students who cannot read and write in their own language but expected to adopt English in a single school year? How do you break the news that the American dream is not in stock for everyone?
All right, folks, we've got 5 minutes. 5-minute break. We're on the last stretch here.
Home stretch.
Last stretch is right.
So we're going to do the 3 more.
Right.
And then I think we'll skip the QA.
Yeah, good
But
idea.
if you could say, we've got all the questions, maybe at the reception you could ask people questions,
Yeah.
talk to people. And then I want to, so you're going to do the last 3, and then when they're done, you will, we'll skip QA and then go right into the kids.
Yep.
So I want to introduce you to them.
Okay.
And then, one last thing I want to tell you is that, so then you do the kids, and then the journalist panel. I told you Bianca's, did I tell you that?
Yep,
Bianca is
she's
here.
not.
So Kirk will be there instead.
Okay.
And that'll just be free-flowing.
Yeah.
For as long as you need.
And we'll keep it short. And I think the less time we
give people
banter,
time to talk.
the more time I think we can spend. I'd rather spend more time with questions from the audience.
Yes. I want to go to the bathroom and come back because I know I'm next. Yes, you do. We'll wait for you. How about that? No, between you and me. Let me introduce you.
Are they miking them?
Yeah. Wait right here because they'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah. So hi, Dylan. So I think with the kids, it's just talking about these issues of.
As soon as I meet them, I'll.
Have a sense. Yeah.
I'll
I know that
maybe I should just ask them. What do you guys want to talk about? You know.
I don't know if they'll. They might need
I mean, given that,
guidance
given that you screened them and that you kind of asked them to do this.
As family engagement.
And middle school.
And what do they think about middle school?
Right.
How do the adults
Yeah.
in their lives?
Yeah, well, I think one easy thing to do is to say, talk to the people in this room,
Yeah.
you know, who could easily be your parents.
Excuse me, when you're talking, I'm just going to change the mics in your battery pack.
Okay?
Here they are.
There they are.
Hey there.
Hey, guys. All right. Okay, my mic's on now. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats so we can get on to the next panel members. All right. Up next, Therese Moore, Jack Moran, and Joshua Moran, followed by Ann M. Walsh, Don Portanova, and then Kareem Mitchell, and Altice Jones and Letitia Nero Trent. So, Therese Moore, Jack Moran, Joshua Moran.
Good afternoon. My name is Therese Moore, and instead of telling you about the work I do or my district, I have the honor of introducing you to an example of the outcome that happens when a district has structures that honor the parent voice so that the student's voice can be supported. I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Jack Moran and his son, Joshua Moran.
Oh, wow, my family's there. Do me a favor. Will you please raise your hand if you're not here? Okay, you're with me then. I came to the United States back in 1981, right after college. I came on vacation, and I decided not to go back. My family's still waiting for me after 35 years. After being here for about 10, 11 years, I got into leadership with my church and very involved in the community. And I was very involved with helping in different positions. And then I decided that it was time for me to get married. And I found my beautiful wife, Lisa, who is right in the middle. We have 3 boys. Andrew, who is at the left, right there, who's 24 years old now. And then Josh, who's right here. And Daniel. Julissa is Andrew's girlfriend, who is now part of the family. They're not married yet, and they're planning on getting married. But after the second boy, we thought, well, maybe let's try to have a girl. And Daniel came in.
Right.
So 3 boys. And the challenge started when they were going to school. And we thought we got it all together. We can have family. And we wanted our kids to be successful at school. We just didn't have the skills. How can that happen? We had the education, we were in leadership, and we said, well, we got it together. My wife has been working for World Vision for 29 years. And, but no, it wasn't like that. We faced very strong challenges. And we just didn't know how to be involved with our children's education. And we find some struggles through the years, the early middle school, and then the early high school, especially for Andrew. And we said, well, we need to fix this. We need to find a way how we can help our children to be successful. We thought it was just the teacher's responsibility to make our children to be successful in life. But no, the education starts from home. And that's when we said, and after finding some struggles and some experience that we had, some differences at school, including false judgment and some unfairness, we said, this needs to stop, and we need to get involved. We seek for help. And we went to school, and we said, how can we help our children? How can we help you teachers for you to help my children to be successful and to learn what they need to learn? And they referred us to the school district. The school district referred us to family engagement, which was what an idea to be involved and to be engaged with family engagement and help us to understand the process and to get to know the school process and not be ignorant about a lot of things that we thought it was, oh wow, the teachers are all right, or the principals are always right. My son, Andrew, was suspended for 3 days just because he said, "Hello, teacher." And the teacher said, "Oh, you hurt my ears." And he was hurting. And I was called, and it was so embarrassing that he was suspended for 3 days. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to argue that point. And I reached out to family engagement, and that was Trees. And she helped me out. And thank God I was able to, and my wife and I were able to learn the process and how to be engaged, how to help our children. And now we feel very proud of our boys. I'm going to pass it on to Josh so he can share his experience.
Yes, thank you so much. Not as funny as my dad. Unfortunately, I don't have any jokes. I would want to say a pizza joke, but unfortunately, it's too cheesy. People say I'm cheesy, but now I'm more like corny, but that's fine. Yeah, I just want to show like my side of the story where I'm the student, and growing up in high school, I was involved in the student to parent support in the family engagement part of the area. And so, yep, that's me right there. I don't know what I was doing. But one point that I really want to hit too is empathize, and it's kind of been repetitive and redundant, and it has a purpose, and I feel like that's in the reality right now. Just like Claudio said, the kids go through a lot in high school, to be honest. They go through peer pressure, they go through temptation, drugs, classes get really boring, they have sports, you know, they go through all these emotions, and so it gets kind of a lot to them. And so they also have to deal with education. Now, for sure, they don't want to disappoint their parents, right? No one wants to come up with a bad report, or no one wants to show the bad report, right? They'll just never mention it. Yeah, it's there. But if you have a good grade, then you'll mention it, right? Yeah, of course. But it's important to empathize, and that's definitely what my dad did in my case. I knew that I wanted to impress my dad. I wanted to impress my parents because they came over to this side of the country, or to the USA for a better life, for better education, for the future, and he saw that. But I didn't want to ruin that dream of his, and so I got scared. But thankfully, my dad was loving and compassionate that he was able to unlock that door, and instead of me hiding and kind of running away, I was actually like pushing from behind and running full speed kind of thing. And that kind of goes with showing affirmation and affection. And again, like Claudia says, children need a lot of love. They need a lot of affirmation, guidance, you know. Also, what Dr. Hill was saying is that we are all part of the identity in the children, the young children, because we are finding who we are, right? We're finding our interests. Some kids want to become doctors, or some kids want to become a firefighter, or they want to build a cool spaceship, right? Spaceship doesn't even exist, something like that. But we need to be on that part of the side where we're encouraging their identity, encouraging who they are to be, and helping them discover what that is. Because even parents probably don't know what that is. And one thing my dad would always tell me is he loves me. And this is kind of simple, right? But not that many people get that. Not that many people or children get that from their parents, and it's very tough. But the thing is that they need to hear it, because why? You don't want to be hearing it from another girl that they love you, right? I don't need to be hearing that. I mean, I know I'm going to get a future wife someday, but I don't need to be hearing that now. I got school to focus on. I got my passion. Girls a little bit too much. But that goes the same for women too. A lot of the times when young girls, they go to guys a lot for their problems and they go to the issues, is because sometimes they're not being affectionate, or they're not receiving the affection from home to start with. And so they'll turn to other things. And that kind of goes to everything, like drugs and all that kind of stuff. And so what my dad was doing was seeing the light in me that I didn't see to start with. And that kind of leads to my final point, speak destination. I think that's huge. One thing my dad would do is tell me that I was a leader, that I was going to be the president of my school, and that was all in high school, and I was a freshman, I was hearing that, and I was like, yeah, there's no way about that. But next thing you know, it was kind of like echoing in my mind, and suddenly it starts kind of straightening my back, right? My dad is like teaching me as my years go by. He's telling me, this is what you do to be a man. You open the door for a girl. You seat them first. You know, you say please and thank you. You give kisses and hugs when you greet and say goodbye. And speaking that kind of existence into my life is what made it happen. And next thing you know, my senior year, I was president of my high school, captain of my dance team, executive mentor. And I'm not saying that all to boast of myself, but to the fact that my dad was speaking that when I didn't see it myself, and neither did he see it at the moment, but yet it happened. One of my favorite kind of phrases is, let there be light. And there was light. Why? Because my dad was kind of saying something that he didn't see. You say let there be light because there wasn't light before, right? There was darkness and void. But he said, let there be light. He said, Josh, you be the president, or Josh, you go to college, or you do what you want, and then let it happen, right? I mean, now I'm at PLU, Pacific Lutheran University, majoring in computer science, minoring in math, and that's where I'm at. So let the light in.
And so the moral of the story is when you create what the dual capacity framework talks about, opportunity conditions for families to speak into the lives of their children via the education system, then they do the part that schools can't do to help their children feel affirmed, loved, engaged, and they see the light. Thank you.
You're funny. I need a clicker. Clicker, clicker. Nice. Okay. It's on. That thing's on. Have a seat. You pick. Oh, that is not what I expected. Okay. Hello, hearty souls who are still with us. Okay. Oh, my bad. Okay. Ring, ring. Ring.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Ann Walsh. I'm Kurt's advisor and English teacher this year in 8th grade. Oh, everything is fine. Kurt's fine. He's safe. Everything's great. He's never better. Is this his mom, Miss Portanova?
Yes, it is.
Oh, hi. So the school this year is doing a new initiative. It's called Family Teacher Home Visits. And so we want to come to your house and meet with you and learn a little bit about Kurt and just learn more about your family. Would that be something that's interesting to you?
Is it just for Kurt?
Oh gosh, no. We offer to all the kids and all the families. No, Kurt's doing great. Oh, but he has a sister, right? A twin? Yes. Right, Crystal. So I could organize with Crystal's advisor so we could come together if that would be easier for you. And we can learn about both kids and your family and, just so that we can do a better job of teaching them this year because we'll know who they are outside of school.
Can I think about it?
Yeah, sure, you can think about it. Why don't I explain it to Kurt at school so that, he has an idea of what it's all about, and then maybe you guys can talk about it and I'll call you next week?
Sure. Thank you.
Great, okay, thanks. Okay, thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so there is nothing awkward at all about calling a stranger's house and inviting yourself to dinner. It is a totally normal thing. And right now, hundreds of teachers are calling thousands of families and having that very awkward conversation because it is worth the awkwardness to build a relationship with students' families. Let's see if I can make buttons work. So my name's Ann Walsh, and my primary identity at this point is I am a parent of 2 girls, a 9th grader and a 6th grader, so I'm like right in the wheelhouse of all the feelings and all of the middle school things. I'm also the co-founder of an organization called 1647, based here in Boston, and we work with educators both in schools and in pre-service to help them reimagine what family engagement can be and how it can help them support student success.
And I am Dawn Portanova, and I am a single mom with 4 kids, ages 13 to 24. And 9 years ago, I had a home visit, and it changed my life forever.
And now I'm a parent trainer for 1647.
It's true. She is. So we actually both have had home visits. Dawn and I met many years ago because our kids both went to a school that did home visiting well before I did this work. But today we're going to talk about Dawn's experience. So Dawn, let's travel back in time. There you are. Hi, you. And tell us what was going on with your family when you were called and offered a home visit.
Okay, so at the time I was called from Cart's teacher, my twins at the time were 4 years old. And I had, sorry. I had 4-year-old twins, and then I had also middle schoolers, 2 girls. And we were pretty much that sinking ship. We were drowning. And, you know, the teacher called, and I was really skeptical because I was raised to believe that, you know, parents do their job, parents do their jobs and teachers do their jobs, and they didn't mix. And Miss Pam was calling, and I was like, I don't know, I was afraid because I was intimidated by teachers' education, not having my own, so I was very nervous. And, sorry. Woo!
No, you're doing great.
And so,
so Miss Pam did not give up.
The kids had to convince me, and Miss Pam had to really keep calling and having the kids encourage me to come and know that it would be a safe situation and it would benefit their education.
But it happened. Miss Pam came to the house and everything was okay. It was good.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, it was awesome. I learned so much about my kids and about their education.
So when we say home visit, people often have the expression that I assume Dawn had when we did our little phone call, right? They're like, parents are like, what is that about? And often practitioners are like, oh yeah, home visit, I know about that. That's like when the kid's in trouble, or like they don't go to school, or when you want to like check on them with your checklist to make sure they're like doing the right things. This is not what we were talking about. We are talking about a model that was created by the Parent-Teacher Home Visits out of Sacramento, and also has been used in a lot of the work with the Flamboyant Foundation, which Jackie talked about earlier. We use the model and the protocols that these organizations have taught us in the work that we do with our school partners, including Lawrence, which Denise is in the house. We work with a lot of schools in Lawrence to use this protocol. This is not a scary home visit. This is a good home visit, okay? So it's about relationship building, hopes and dreams. We tell teachers we're all about helping them be human with their students' families. Like just hang out, learn about people, ask them questions, because students don't drop out of space, right? They come from a family, and you can serve a student better when you know who that family is. Visits are for everyone. As soon as someone's like, oh, it's only for the kids who fill in the blank, right? The kids with an IEP, or the kids who are English language learners, or the kids who are struggling, or then people are gonna be like, nope, you're not coming to my house because this is not what you say it is. This is because there's a problem. So you gotta make sure that it's a cross-section of students and that you're reaching out to all families. It's right there. Students, visits are voluntary and scheduled in advance. You think it's awkward to be like, hi, can I come to your house? It's more awkward to knock on someone's door unannounced and be like, hi, I'm here to build a relationship with you. Like, that is not going to go well. So you schedule in advance so that families know, and they have the option to say no thank you. Like, that's not going to work for me, okay? Teachers are trained and compensated. As Karen was pointing out earlier, like teachers and Vito was talking about, teachers are scared of families, just like families are nervous about teachers, right? And so you can't just be like, go build relationships with people you don't know. Have fun with that. No, you need to build their skills and capacity and let teachers practice in a safe space so they feel like they have what they need to do this well. And educators do this in pairs. They go with a colleague and they really think, what were my assumptions about that family before I had that visit? And what did we learn about this student that we can actually leverage in the classroom to reach the student more effectively? What do we need to share with our colleagues to make sure this kid is known and that we're doing a great job for them in the classroom? And we call it a home visit, but it's not really just for home. It's anywhere. We've had home visits at sports practices, at parents' places of work. We've had them at parks, at coffee shops, anywhere that the family is comfortable. Okay? It's all about taking the teacher out of the power position and making sure that it's a place where the family is comfortable and the teacher gets to learn a little bit about the family and where the kid spends their time when they're not in the classroom. Okay, so it happened, and then what happened?
So then I was able to go to the school and volunteer and visit in the classrooms and help out a lot. And I realized that I was my kid's first teacher, and it helped me to get, that sinking ship when I was drowning, it helped me to grab onto that life preserver and know that I was getting the help that my kids needed for their education.
Nice. Okay, so this is all beautiful, but remember those twins, 4 years old, so cute and tiny. And we're not talking about cute and tiny today. We're talking about adolescents. And they're like scary middle schoolers, right, with all of the messiness. So you had a couple of those, though.
Yes.
Right.
I have
so
a few of those.
Yeah, a couple of those were hanging around. So how did this affect what was going on with them?
So at the time, I had the 4-year-olds, I also had middle schoolers, and they were emotionally and academically struggling, to say the least. And so it was hard, but after the home visit, I realized that I could go into the school and talk to the administrators and help them to graduate, help them to go to college. And now, those are my girls, and they graduated. And one's a dental assistant, one's a medical assistant. I'm very proud of them. And now I have middle schoolers now that are 13-year-old twins that were
right.
4 back in the day.
Yeah, and everyone's good, right? We're not sinking. Yay, team!
Saved my life.
Yeah, big deal. So the key here is the relationship, right? We use home visits because we call it a gold standard practice, right? If you're doing a home visit, you're accelerating all that work that it can take like 10, 15 phone calls. It can take a lot of time. If you go to someone's house and you spend time with them, you're going to be able to move that relationship to a trusting place much more quickly. But why is this key in middle school, right? We do home visits in middle school. Middle school's hard. If we haven't gotten that out of today, let's drive that thing right home. Middle school is wicked hard, as we say here. There are so many teachers. If I'm a mom, my kid had 5 teachers, or my kid had 1 teacher, now my kid has 6 teachers, or 7 teachers. So you're asking, who's my person, right? That's why we have advisory. Middle school lets you have advisory, then you have a person. So many students. Does anyone know my kid, right? And then there's also all the feelings, right? Like, is my kid normal? Is this okay? So the key is, if you can't do home visits because they're too expensive, they're logistically challenging, what's significant is that the school reaches out to the parent or the family and says, we want to have a relationship with you. You're the expert on your child. Please come help us educate your kid. So when a student sees the adults in their life are collaborating and working together and supporting that student together, we're all going to make it through middle school. You had that song.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kareem Mitchell. I am in the 7th grade, and I come from Jefferson Middle School in Washington, D.C.
I'm Altice Jones, and I'm his mom. And I'm Letitia Nero Trent. I am Kareem's advisory teacher.
Okay, so today we will be modeling a student-led conference for you guys.
And Jackie talked about this in her session. We're actually going to show an abbreviated version, so it'll be about 5 minutes of a 20 to 30-minute conference.
All right, shall we get started?
If you're ready.
Okay. Mom, Ms. Trent, I'd like to thank you for coming to my SOC today. Today we will look at my grades, my math and reading levels, and also my goals and behavior. So my first grade is in humanities, which was an A. And something I've done well in this class is that I get ahead in my work. So when I get ahead of my work, it gives me chances for extra credit. And something I need to improve on is turning out all of my classwork every day. Yeah. The next class we're looking at is my second enrichment class, which is Spanish. In Spanish, I got a C+. Oh,
you can do better.
Yeah. Something I've done well in this class is take assessments, and something I need to improve on is turning in my homework and classwork once again.
So it seems that you study really hard and you test really well, but you can't remember to turn in your work. Why is that?
Well, sometimes, like at the beginning of the class, like during transition time, I don't like focus. So that like prevents me from hearing the directions to turn in my classwork and homework.
So what can I do to help you turn in your homework? Got some ideas.
What ideas?
So I think that I can make you a folder necklace. We can call it the homework folder necklace. You put it on your neck, and you put your homework in there, and then you can't forget to turn it in because it's right there.
Okay.
How does that sound, Kareem? Kareem, you know we have some high goals for you, right? You have some high expectations.
Yes.
And we definitely want to make sure that we are turning in all of our classwork. So
Yes.
that's Mom's strategy and suggestion. What else might we be able to do?
Like keep reminding me. Like every time I leave from home, you can remind me. And in advisory, you can like remind me to turn out all my homework today.
So how does this sound? If Ms. Trent checks your homework every morning in advisory and texts Mom if it's missing so that she knows that she may need to pull in her strategy if Kareem's not turning it in. Does that sound good?
I guess, yeah.
So you know that'll be the plan.
Okay.
If you don't turn in your homework, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I should hang it up in your room so you
As
have
a
a
reminder.
reminder.
Just to remind her.
The next thing that we will look at is my work sample for humanities. I earned an A on this assignment. The purpose of this assignment was to discuss the pros and cons of immigration. I'm proud of this work because my grade was kind of low and it's boosted it up.
So Kareem, can you share with Mom what specifically did you do really well with this assignment that brought your grade up?
Well, I think one thing that I did really well was my claim statement was short and it had the information that it needed and it didn't like give away the whole essay in the beginning. Immigration has many different hurdles and it can happen for a lot of different reasons. And I cited evidence to like support my claim. And also it was neat.
And that's the neatest I've ever seen your handwriting, so I'm really glad about that.
Yeah. My handwriting's not that good, as you can see. Next, we will go into my iReady data, which is a math test that we take at my school. So my math score was 541, which meant I am above grade level in math. And I plan to improve this math score by completing iReady lessons at home and at school.
And Mom, if Kareem completes iReady at home, he can use that as extra credit on his math grade as well. So his math teacher will take that. Do you want to tell Mom about your exciting news with the park score?
Oh yeah, and I took the park last year, and my results came back this year, and I was the only person in the school to score level 5 on the park.
Very good. Very good.
Okay, now for my behavior script and reflection. I received 5 detentions and and 1 positive referral. I got most of them for defiance.
So, question, what have you learned from these referrals?
I learned that I need to listen the first time given. Like, listen to every direction that my teacher gives me and do it the first time that is given.
And Kareem, what might be one strategy that you can use if you feel yourself getting towards that point?
Signal myself to stop. Like, maybe I can do something that signals myself to stop, like touch my fingers together or something. Now for goal setting. My goal is to get honor roll or principal's honor roll. The difference between those two is that principal's honor roll is straight A's, and honor roll is just, you can have B's with A's. So,
sounds like a good one.
So one thing that I can do to reach this goal is I need to work on turning in my classwork and homework. Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't have to get a homework folder around my neck.
I'm gonna make it tonight. It'll be waiting for you as a reminder.
What can you do to help me?
So what I can do to help you reach your goal is I can, at night, make sure that your homework is done and remind you to put it in your book bag so that you don't leave it at home. And then in the morning, I can also remind you that you need to turn in your homework. And I might slip a little note in your lunchbox or something, just as another reminder. Sound like a plan?
Yeah. So we don't get to that homework folder. What about you, Ms. Trent?
So what I'll do, Kareem, is just like we do every day in advisory, I'll continue to check Kareem's homework. And you already know, if something is missing, I have mom's number on speed dial, and I'll be letting her know so she knows to make some new jewelry for you to wear to school the next day.
Okay. And that concludes our SLC. Okay, so now we will discuss the benefits of SLCs. Well, one way that SLCs benefit me is because I feel like I'm clean and I don't have anything to lie about because I can't hide anything. And I also can hold myself accountable for the things that I do right and the things that I do wrong.
Well, what I like from the parents' aspect, what I like about the SLC is, like he said, it holds him accountable. Usually during parent-teacher conferences, it's just you and the teacher talking. The student is not present. And then when you get home to talk to your student, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. So it kind of bridges that gap, and it shows the student that we're here to support him. It comes full circle. So that's what I like about it.
And the SLCs are so powerful because it really does help to foster a partnership and a relationship with the school and with families. So Kareem knows when he's presenting his data, when he's advocating for himself, that mom is at the table, his teacher's at the table, we're hearing what he needs, and we're making sure that we give him all the supports that he's asking for and the supports that he deserves as a student. And it also just helps to hold all of us accountable. So we're setting goals as a team, we're setting action steps as a team, and everyone knows exactly what they need to do to help Kareem succeed. So it's all about Kareem, and it makes sure that we're all on the same page with that.
So basically, student-led conferences are a good strategy for family engagement.
Thank you.
Great job. It's, I have to say, it's so great to have kids as kind of like a way to wrap up this whole event, because those are the people that we're supposed to be caring about and listening to. With that in mind, I'm going to invite 3 more students. And are they in the house? Amin, Kevin, and Kelly, please join us. And as they make their way to the stage, a reminder that, you know, there's many presenters who are still we're still going to be hanging around, and for you to approach them. Questions that we weren't able to include in our conversation, you can always ask personally, and there's all kinds of ways to just, you know, connect with them. We will try and squeeze in a few questions for these young people as well. I'm going to join them now at the stage. And, you know, this was one of the few panels where we didn't really have anything prepared. So I'm curious about what you thought about Kareem and the way he and his mom, you know, were talking about school and accountability and being responsible and not being able to hide anything. Is that something you all worried about? Maybe we could start with you, Amin. Your mom's in the audience, by the way.
I kind of can relate to Kareem, and like students, parents and teachers should really work hard and like learning about the students and what they're like going through during middle school, and like I can say middle school is really hard.
Why is it hard? And I'll get you all to answer that as well. But for you, why is middle school hard?
Middle school is hard because first, from my school, when you start school, you have to get in class. You have only 3 minutes between, like, to get from one class to another class, and just think my school is really big, so that's extremely hard. And that, when you get into the class, you're expected to like go into everything, like exactly when you step in, get out your binder and your notebook. And then when you're at that point, you only have 5 minutes to write down a very long objective. And then you gotta do the questions, 5 questions. And then after that, we would go through the questions. And at the end of the day, he would give you a couple 2 pages at least for homework. And then it would be this huge math notebook and like it's just having that like for 7 periods squeezed into a day that starts from 7:25 and ends at 1:40 is really, really exhausting.
Yeah. Well, for me, middle school hardest thing was staying awake. Kevin, and I don't know how much you've had a chance to share in what we've been all discussing, but you know, this idea of parents being crucial, really important to your success. At the same time, we hear that kids and parents at that point, you know, middle school, interest starts lagging, dropping off. Give us your story, your experience, and the way you and your parents relate.
Well, I mean, I just finished middle school, so I thought it was pretty hard.
You survived.
Yeah, luckily. It's a different world when you enter middle school. Elementary school and middle school is just a really big difference because people are changing. You're trying to fit in, and just so many things are happening all at once, and you lose track of stuff. But me, I try to always keep my parents really close to me because I feel like with all these changes, I feel like they'd be the best to help me with anything that I need help with.
But don't you also go through this period or this thinking that, you know, I want to be independent. I want to be free. I don't need my parents to be, you know, bugging me about whatever. Isn't that also part of the issue? I mean, part of being in middle school, wanting to say, I'm my own person. And my parents, yeah, I love them, but the less I have to respond to them, the better. Or am I way off?
No, you're spot on. Yeah, I feel like when you enter middle school, you start to think of yourself more as a young adult, and having that label makes you feel a little bit more empowered and more like wanting to be more independent.
Yeah. Before I get to Kelly, I am curious. Give me what was the absolute most the toughest thing you experienced in middle school when you hit the ground?
Probably all the peer pressure that happens, because, like I said, middle school is it's a lot of change happening at once, and sometimes I wasn't ready for this change, and then another change, and then just all the changes just hitting me at once. I felt like that was the hardest part of middle school.
Yeah. Kelly? Have you heard Amin or Kevin say anything that is strange, not applicable?
No, it's really spot on.
Now, I do have to ask you, obviously you're as a young woman, is it different for young women as for young girls as it is than it is for young boys?
It's the same, but usually there's more like changes, like more changes in our like mind and emotions and who to like talk to and not. And if like our friends are like talking to somebody that you don't like, that's like a problem for girls for some reason.
You know, they say, and I don't know if it's true, I have to ask the experts, that young women your age are a little bit more mature than than a young man their age. Do you think that's true, or is that a myth?
I feel like it's kind of true, but it depends on the person. Like, if their person's acting like they're 5 and they're supposed to be 14, they are really immature. But that can't. Yeah, I've heard that women or young women are mature, but I don't really think that's true.
Yeah. We've also focused a lot on technology here, on young people being tethered to all kinds of gadgets and you know, smartphones and you name it. And there's a growing concern that you're all too preoccupied. Do you own a smartphone?
I used to, but like. No, like first when I had the smartphone, I would like not use it that much. Like if I wanted to use the smartphone, it was easy to play a game I really liked or to watch something on YouTube that like, for example, I'm like really into learning new things on like, for example, TED Ed, Crash Course and stuff, other YouTube channels like that. But there's some times where I just go on something else. For example, I like to watch hilarious videos.
Okay.
And sometimes I like listening to music, but when it comes to video games and like using my consoles, I like using that over a phone.
But you said you don't have a smartphone right now.
No, because when I first had it, I got a 1C in one class, and my mom took it away, and she told me I had to prioritize
right.
on that subject, which was ELA. And I wasn't really good at like essays because I used to have a lot of things on my mind, but I couldn't like put it on paper. So I used to go after school every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, go up to my teacher and ask her if she has any extra credit, if I can do it or if I can redo a quiz. And my mom told me that if you don't come back with a B, at least you're not getting your phone back. And I didn't get my phone back until the last term of the school year. And then after that, it was broken.
Well, let me ask Kevin and Kelly this. Do you think that technology that you're all so familiar with gets in the way of your relationship with your parents?
Yes.
First with you, Kevin.
Yes. I feel like social media has a big part of that, because you might see something in social media that this person does and you feel like a person that you might look up to, so you want to be just like them. And if they do something, you might want that personality to rub off of you, even though it might not be the right thing to do.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with Kevin. It's just like, so like if I'm feeling like I have a stressful day, I would usually go on my phone for like 2 or 3 hours. And then my dad would be like, oh, it's time for you to get off your phone. So he has like this app to turn off the Wi-Fi for me, mostly.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, and then I should read and do my homework and all that. And then he has certain times when he just turns it off so I can do my chores and everything.
Yeah.
But like, I'm not really attached to my phone because I know it's like just an object because I know that there's actual people to talk to face to face.
Well, see, that's the kind of maturity I was talking about. Does it get in the way of academics?
No, because I am always on top of my homework. I have like an agenda that I write my homework every day, then I get home, do my homework, and then I have other things to do after that.
Yeah. What about you, Kevin? Has it ever hurt? I mean, have you ever made that connection that, man, I got a C or a D because I spent way too much time on this stuff? Be truthful.
I'm working on it.
He's honest. He's honest.
I mean, I'm not really much of like a D student because I feel like if I get a D, I really need to like just set everything aside, all the distractions, and just work on that grade. But I feel like sometimes even when I try, sometimes I might just get attached to my phone. That's a bad thing.
Yeah. Your parents clearly love you and want you to succeed. There was something that came up earlier in the day where when kids are lectured, you know, parents are on their back, on their case, and they're trying to get them to do the right thing. Kids may get in an argument with a parent, but in the end, they end up thinking, my parents are right. Do you think that if you look at your peer group, do you think that most kids that you know and hang out with feel that their parents are right most of the time when it comes to school and the kind of quality of life you all have as teenagers?
Usually, I think that sometimes some kids' parents don't really care about what they do because last year my friend, she got bad grades. Her parents didn't do anything about it. But like if I got like a B-, I would get like in really big trouble with my dad. He's like, you better get like B and up, but nothing below that. Yeah. So usually like I was not doing good in English. I would get C's like every year, but this 8th grade last year was like the first time I actually got a B in that class. Yeah. I was like so proud of myself and everything, and then I showed my dad, and then he got so happy. He's like, finally you get a good grade in this class, and then other classes I'm fine with, like I get A's.
But the flip side of that is that it can be really stressful.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen and done stories of cases where young people are trying to meet their kids or their parents' expectations, and for whatever reason they fall short, and that can become really stressful, and it could kind of snowball. It could have the opposite effect, right, of you doing even worse. Mm-hmm. And Amin was kind of nodding his head over here while you were talking.
My parents, like what they want me to do, that's like my top priority. And like my mom wants me to become an engineer. She signs me up for all these coding classes, and like, and I try my best to like meet the expectation. But sometimes to the point where I fall short on that, I kind of feel like I failed myself, and I failed my parents. And as I feel like really stressed because of that, because like my parents, they came to this country so I can have the dream that I wanted to have. My father works day and night to provide me with the things I need so I can have a better education. And sometimes I really take that for granted, but like I appreciate everything that my parents have done for me, but sometimes I feel like I failed them.
How often do you have a conversation like that with your dad or with your mother?
Like sometimes twice or once a week.
Man. Kevin, let me ask you about this question of, I'm just curious about identity. I mean, I don't know what that means exactly. I'm not just talking about cultural or national identity, but I know that young people worry a lot about identity, mostly in the context of how they want to be seen. by your peers, by even your parents, your family, whoever. How important is identity for people to know, or for you to want to portray a certain image, either by the way you dress, the way you speak, how you do in school? Is that important?
I think identity is huge because some people are so focused on being what, like wanting to be what other people want them to be, and I feel like that like plays a big role in falling behind in school and in any other thing.
In other words, you get jerked around.
Yeah.
Right. But see, that to me is a little contradictory to this idea of wanting to be independent. I don't want to be tethered to my family or to my parents. I don't want them bossing me around. I want to be my own person. And then falling into this trap of, trying to please everybody. Isn't that, that to me is confusing.
Yeah. It's a pretty hard balance to balance. But I feel like you won't always be able to please everybody. I feel like as long as you're okay with what you're doing and what you want everybody to know who you are as you as a person, I feel like that's what is important at the end of the day, and just making your parents proud.
Yeah. Kelly, again, this question of identity, is it different for young women?
No, it's exactly what he said. It's what it's hard to balance trying to please all your friends and everybody. Like me, I want everybody to know that I'm a nice person, I'm funny, I take my work seriously, and I'm like a good person all around. But like when I see other people doing this thing or wearing that thing, I sometimes think, am I doing the right thing, like wearing the right clothes and all that?
Yeah. Let me start winding this down. Did you want to add something, Amin?
It's also like about trends, like what's happening this year. For example, last year everybody was about earlier this summer everybody was about the dab, and like
wait. The what?
It's something called a dab.
Dab.
Dab. D-A-B.
You lost me.
It's a dance.
It's a dance.
It's a dance trend. So you put your
Can you
hand,
show us?
You do this. And everybody has been doing it across the internet.
Wait, that's a dance?
No, yes. I'm confused as well because they also have a dance where you put up your hands and you do that.
Sounds like the Macarena to me.
Yeah. And also people also try to do these trends so like they can appease their friends they have.
Yeah.
And like the more friends they have, the more they try to do to to seem a certain way to everybody. For example, I used to have a friend in elementary school. We were like friends. We had all the same classes. We would always talk to each other during lunch. But then when it was the first year of middle school, he changed completely. Like I could even notice.
How?
Because he had new friends, and he would change the way he talked, the way he dressed, the way he the people who he talked to. He stopped even talking to me, so I stopped talking to him.
So change, not good, but bad.
It can be good and bad.
Okay. So you're no longer friends?
No.
Wow. So nobody's going to demonstrate the dab. Okay. Well. Okay. Again, to start winding this down, do you think that middle school, and given the relationship that you've shared with us, with your parents, your school, do you think that middle school really prepared you for what's next? I mean, high school? Uh-oh. No.
No, because literally they say, oh, high school's gonna be harder and all this, blah, blah, blah. But then when I got there, it was like the same thing. It's just the school is bigger and there's more people. Middle school doesn't really prepare you for just like that. That's just like a whole 3 years of emotional battle with yourself and other people.
That's a good way to describe it. Let me go to Kevin first, and then to Amin. You're in ninth grade now.
Yes.
did middle school prepare you?
I feel like going out of middle school, I thought ninth grade was gonna be like this scary place that I wasn't gonna like every day. But then I actually, on the first day, I just tried to be confident, and now I really like high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what do you like about high school that you didn't like about middle school?
The people are more mature in high school. I feel like middle school is just a bunch of little kids. And
that was you. That used to be you. So when you say more mature, what do you mean exactly?
Well, they're more older, so hopefully they're more mature, and they know, like they have experiences that help them grow as a person more, so they know what to do.
Yeah. So I mean, you're in 8th grade still.
Yeah.
Are you scared of high school?
Somewhat, yes and no, because my sister is in high school, and like she like the school she goes to, it seems like a lot of work. And but sometimes I'm not, cause like I've also talked with some of the teachers in my high school, cause my school has like 7th and 8th then high school. And that in that school I get to talk to the teachers that are a grade ahead of me, and they seem really nice. Last year when I went to my 8th grade science teacher, he's like hilarious. He'd make a lot of jokes, and that like he was like one of my favorite teachers. And I think you should also do connections like that, like go to the next year's teacher and like start making connections with them earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, laying the groundwork.
But also, I was like downright scared. Like, you should see the backpacks my sister would carry. It was like right now I have to take 2 languages in school. I have like a Latin binder, my Arabic binder, my Algebra 1 binder, my my ELA binder. And this would all go together, my bag would be big. And I thought 9th grade is gonna be even bigger.
Well, yeah, no, that's developing a serious back problem, I think. Where does that, we had a great presentation about someone going back to read a love letter they wrote when they were really young, teenagers. And I don't know, you probably missed it, you hadn't arrived yet. But I am curious to ask you, I guess, the inverse question. Where do you see yourselves in 10, 15 years? Starting with you, Amin, where do you see yourself, if you can project yourself into the future?
I'd see myself as a hardworking man in probably finish college, going forward towards that dream. I've always wanted to become an engineer, and also to have and to also start a family on my own.
Okay, those are pretty laudable goals.
But that's still way too far.
No, but it's not a bad idea to have those thoughts. I mean, in fact, the more specific, the more interesting they are to me. Kevin, where do you see yourself?
I see myself accomplishing my goal in life, which is to be successful, take care of my parents, and to give back to the people that have helped me.
What do you see yourself doing?
I can't tell. I don't know, actually.
Yeah, no, people are saying it's okay, and it's absolutely okay. I mean, I know a lot of people in their mid-20s who don't know what they're doing, and so it's maybe too much to ask, but have you ever said, here's my passion? Are you too young to have a passion for something? Whether it's a career, a discipline, it could be. I know very young people who are passionate about their music, their art. Do you think you have a passion? Have you developed one?
Well, I feel like It could be growing on me, because right now I feel like I want to, it could be a possibility that I want to do a job to give back to the community, because they've like treated me so well and made me who I am.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Kelly, what are your plans? Where do you see yourself?
Me, I see myself finishing college as a nurse practitioner for the emergency room, helping others, and having my family and giving my parents a nice house.
That's giving back. That's giving back. Is nursing something that somebody else in your family has done?
My mom wants to be a nurse, but now she wants to be a social worker.
We have about just under 5 minutes left, and I'm going to invite our audience. I don't know if they're set up for it, but even if you need to, shout out a question to our young panelists here. Anybody have any questions? Anybody out there have anything to ask? There's actually a handheld mic that you can use. There's, yeah, Ron? Oh, there are questions up here. Never mind. Okay, actually, you can look here. And why don't you just voluntarily pick a question you want to answer? Starting with you, Kelly, pick a question that you want to answer.
What are your hopes for after graduation? I got into a really good medical school, and I get to visit my parents often, and I graduate and get a good job.
Okay. Kevin, take the one you want.
I'm gonna take the first one. Do you all feel like school is relevant to you? Does it feel like real world stuff? I feel like, I know like it's school, so not everything you learn you're gonna use in real life, but you do pick up a lot of skills, like pick up social skills and learn how to communicate with others, and you pick up being responsible with all your work and keeping up. And I feel like that is a skill you need to have for the real world when you have a job and you have to be more responsible.
Yeah. Amin, your turn. Pick one.
Do you feel like your parents know who you really are?
Oh, I'm so glad you picked that one. I think that's a really good one.
My parents know who I am and what, my mom, aside from my father, my mom knows exactly who I am, what type of person I am, what I like to do, and what type of friends I have. And I think that's really, really important, because she can also give me critique on how I should behave, what I should do, and what else, what goals should I put forward and focus on, rather than crazy stuff going all around. And and I feel also my parents are always there for me. They're that wall. For example, it's like that trust fall, when you fall back and they catch you. I think my parents are like that.
I'm going to squeeze in a fourth question for all of you. Do you feel you have adult supports who are not your parents, mentors, or people in the community? And we're not talking about your parents, but adult support from people other than your parents.
Yeah, I have my grandparents. They teach me things. Like my grandma teaches me how you should act when other people's here. You shouldn't go into other people's conversations when other people's talking. And last year, I had an advisor that would give us advice for high school and middle school. She's a very nice lady. I had her for 3 years, and now I have a new advisor, which I'm going to start learning to look up to, and we can talk about problems and everything like that.
That's great. Kevin?
I feel like I do surround myself with adults that share my experiences and just know who I am, because I feel like You can't tell your parents everything because it could be kind of awkward. Just opening yourself up to them, I feel like that's just kind of weird. So, like, yeah.
I think the people laughing know what you're talking about.
But yeah, I do try to surround myself with people that I know and really trust. I feel like trust, having trust with an adult that isn't your parent, I feel like that's really important to have in your life.
I mean, you have the last word.
I think, for example, at 8 to 6, the after school I go to, the adults there are really nice, and I like to talk to them, have a casual 5-minute conversation with most of the adults, talk to other students as well, and I feel like it's really important to talk to other people as well.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, a big applause. Good job. And if their parents are in the audience, I know it means mom is here, you have to take a bow. Thank you. Thank you, guys. I'm not going to move from the stage because we've got our last panel, a wrap-up panel with Arun. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. And with Kirk. Is Kirk around? There he is. If you need to stretch, please do so. We are final. This is the final thing. Then there's wine and cheese. But anyway, Kirk, thank you. Arun, thank you. This is a chance, and I'd like to focus as much of this as I can on your questions more than our bantering back and forth. Anybody have a question for us? This is an opportunity for you to get a sense of what, I mean, we've heard so many story ideas during this day that we've either done before or that we have a new, fresh new look, a chance anyway, to approach in a fresh new way. But I guess one lingering question for me throughout this has been, are we, reporters, missing the story or the stories? And unless somebody else has a question, then maybe that's the one we should start with. Anybody else before I ask that question? Okay, please think about a question you have. Did you say you agree? You agree. Well, I'm going to have you ask the other question then. So, Arun.
Well, one thing that I'd say, and I think it's important as we're trying to serve our audience here, because you mentioned I've got some great story ideas too. You guys have served us really well, but we're here to serve you. And journalists, we are in a weird position in relation to you and what you do, because we share some of the same sense of mission. We want to educate and inform and enlighten, but we're not quite your friends at the same time. We have a job as, we talked a bit about the dangers of the social media. Maybe we talk a bit about the dangers of the news media and ways in which it might be helpful for you to know how we go about our jobs and approach that. Because again, we have a similar mission, which is why you're here at WGBH, which does education in part of what we do, but we're kind of the GBH news side or the NPR news side of things. And we have a different mission in that. And I was thinking as we were talking today about community, about family engagement, obviously community engagement is a big part of what you do and a big part of supporting adolescents and in their education. And as journalists, we are kind of part of that, your tools for good or bad in doing that. And just one thing I throw out as a general thing, Claudio and I were talking about when we do report these stories, very often what drives these, and especially in broadcast, what's getting on the air are the quality of the voices. And situations like this where you are able to talk in, I think, down-to-earth terms, really getting real, not getting too academic, even though we're talking about academics, is crucial in getting out what you do.
Well, and going back to that conversation, it was especially true of like some of the stories that Arun has done about the brain and the presentation you heard this morning. How, I mean, technical it can be. And I mean, education, for all its quote unquote simplicity, is one of the most convoluted, complicated beats out there. We make assumptions about what people know about schools, about teachers, about kids, and yet we know so little.
You mentioned the complications, the jargon in higher ed. I spend half of my time working with my editor, Ken Cooper, who's here in the back. We spend hours distilling our stories down and getting that jargon out of the stories. But back to your question about, are we missing the story? You nodded your head. Going back to your comments earlier this morning, you talked about how we live in this treacherous world, I think, and it's easy to kind of lose faith. But the stories of the kids that were just up here, and the poems that you heard. If you've lost faith in this country, just listen to those kids, and the poems that we heard today. If that doesn't restore your faith, I don't know what will. So it's our job to get out and tell those stories. There's so much. I mean, I get pitched dozens of stories every single day, and I could do half of them, and they'd be fine, right? But the real work is going out and going to schools. I cover higher ed, so I spend a lot of time on college campuses. We launched this desk about 3 years ago here at GBH, and I was just overwhelmed with pitches. At the time, the Boston Globe, the largest newspaper in New England, didn't have anyone dedicated to higher education. So they heard that we had a higher ed reporter, an editor here, and they bombarded me with pitches, and it was overwhelming. I was a general assignment reporter, totally overwhelmed. And we kind of regrouped and we picked 5 themes. And so those themes are always developing, but we try to, when I get a pitch, I try to throw it into one of those buckets. So we do a lot on college costs, student debt. We look at access, increasing access for low-income, underrepresented minority and low-income students. We look at new business models, things like competency-based education, online learning. We do innovation technology, looking at things like neuroscience and different models of ed. And then we're always asking this question about what we call global competitiveness, which is, are we providing enough high-quality, affordable degrees in this country to remain globally competitive? So those are the 5 themes that we developed about 3 years ago. We've shifted over the years to try to respond to what we're seeing now. We do a lot of stories on free speech. Increasingly, we're doing more stories in the Trump era about diversity on college campuses. And so, yeah, we're missing a lot of stories, but I hope that the stories that do get to the air resonate with our listeners, and it's really those student voices.
Well, let me take folks behind the scenes a bit, at least to explain how sometimes these stories get on the air at NPR. I could easily have a long list of story ideas that I want to pitch, and I do, and often okay, let's sit on these for now, and we've got to cover the breaking news and all the stupidity going on in Congress. But more often than not, like this has happened so often, I may have a story about an 8th grader or a middle school somewhere that's doing something I know. It was a story out of Baltimore, and it was about peer pressure and how some pro bono attorneys had gone to the school to do conflict resolution stuff. And they were training kids how to break up fights at the school. I thought it was a great story, and I had planned to go there and do the story, but I needed to pitch the story to a show. Well, I don't know. How much time do you want? I mean, what, 4.5 minutes? No, maybe 8 minutes? No, sorry, that's not going to fly. Okay, 4.5. And there was little or no interest in the story, and I couldn't understand why. Well, I put it off. I eventually did the story, but I put it off, and the story came back because guess who on the show all of a sudden has an 8th grader? That same person. And says to me, boy, 8th grade is interesting. It's an interesting age group, isn't it? Yeah, there's a lot of bullying, and it's a story I told you a year ago. I mean, sometimes it has to be, at least the editorial process sometimes is hampered by this sense of identifying with the story. And if you have an editor who's got kids, you're in. You're in. Versus someone who says, that story is comparing it to what's going on, again, in politics or foreign coverage or the latest earthquake. I mean, it is competing. Education and even good stories compete with so much that, again, you're hard pressed to put those great stories like the ones we've been hearing about on the air or in print.
I remember at the end of last year, I remember pitching some stories to your desk, to the NPR Ed desk, and they were just getting turned down, not because they were bad stories. Your editors were saying, these are great stories, but it was like, you know, Comey was before Congress. You guys had like 10 stories in the can that hadn't hit the air yet. You know, the education stories, we really have to fight to get them on the air. We do.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate here at GBH. Not only do we have a higher ed desk, I'm actually filling in. Bianca Vasquez-Tones is our K-12 reporter. She was supposed to be sitting in this seat today.
Her two-year-old
sick, yeah. So we're really fortunate here in New England where we have the resources and the staff and the talent like Bianca and Ken and our whole team of Arun. You know, we just have a great team of reporters who are really dedicated in this because we know our listeners are interested in this. Our research shows that 2/3 of our audience has some kind of connection to the colleges here. Either they work at them, or they went to one, or their family went to them, or they work at one of the K-12 schools and they're partnering with them. So there's a lot of interest in this right now.
Yeah, I want to go to the parent who agreed with the premise of the first story. I mean, the first question about missing the story. But Arun, is it any easier for you to sell your story or get your story on the air because you're doing, something I think that is pretty unique and unusual, deep dive into the brain and the brain of a teenager?
Yeah, the fact that it's science really helps a lot and makes it more, I mean, the concerns about like pitching education stories, they'll be too, niche-y or narrowly focused, or which seems crazy to me because education affects and impacts all of us, whether or not we have children or not. But it certainly is. And when there's the other side of it, which is, science and neuroscience is also really complicated. And we're often, this is kind of funny because we have 3 reporters on this panel and no editors. We're all going to complain about the great stories we never get on the air and the stuff we have to go through. But
you should call Kurt.
Bring them up after. There's 2 of them are in the room.
You do have to have get these things into short amounts of time. Like when there are a lot of stories going on in the air and the news is crazy these days, getting those boiled down into 3 or 4 minute pieces is really difficult. When the science is really compelling and you can find things about it that are really universal, when you're talking about things like addiction and brain processes and things that are easy to get people universally excited about, I think it is a little bit easier, but you still have that difficulty of shoehorning it in.
Yeah. You said we are missing this story. Tell us what you mean by that. Is there a handheld mic? Yeah.
Yes, there is.
Tell us who you are again.
I am Jawan Smith, and I'm from Cleveland. And what I notice in our city is they'll post all of the bad stories about what's going on in our district, but then they won't post the good stories, like the school my son goes to is a science and medicine school. And in the middle of freshman year, all of the students are presented with a formal white coat. So you had over 100 students, about 80% were students of color, families full in the auditorium from grandmothers to babies, but nothing was in the press about this formal ceremony that happened for these students that received white coats, had their names on it, and it just puts them in the mindset of this is what you're working towards. But I've never seen it in the press, and it's not the first year that they've done this ceremony, but they'll tell you everything bad about our district, but nothing good.
Why not send a letter or an email to the editor and complain?
I'm a letter writer, so better believe I've done it.
And you get no response?
None. I've heard nothing about the white coat ceremony in none of the press in our city.
Yeah.
And that school's been open in that format how many years? About 8 years. Because they reformatted the school. Highest graduation, 100% graduation rate, 98% college acceptance rate. Yeah. And no positive stories about this school. And these children, some of them are getting full rides to medical school, like amazing program. And I mean, the students only take honors and AP classes. It's a full college prep school. And no positive stories about it at all.
Yeah, you're talking about the Cleveland Plain Dealer? Yeah. That's a newspaper?
Yeah, that's our newspaper, but it's not on radio. It's not in our Call and Post, which is our black newspaper. There's nothing
written about this amazing program where they're presenting these children with white coats. I mean, you have parents in there crying, you have grandparents, great-grandparents, auditorium 5 times this size full of families, no reporters, nowhere in sight.
Anybody out there also feel that, you know, even, especially if it's good news, that we, the media, ignore it? Yeah. Yeah. Can I ask a question? Sure, yeah. Tell us who you are.
I'm just piggybacking on what she said. My question would be possibly as a solution and a
You're
follow-up.
in Cleveland as well?
No.
No, you're not?
No.
Okay.
Possibly as a solution and a follow-through or follow-up to all of this great learning we've all gotten, I wonder if we might be able to consider our local public broadcasting station a place where the discourse can change, and instead of having a deficit model, we can consider Peter Singe's research about the mental model that people have. They take it with them everywhere they go. So it's possible that the picture that we have of kids of color and families of color is perpetuated by the media, and the first place to make it change might be this audience, this group, this media team.
But I think for public radio, public broadcasting, and that is, I talked about our mission, that is supposed to be part of our mission, to serve the communities in that way. So I think that's very appropriate.
Yeah, if you go back to the 1979 Charter for Public Broadcasting, that's the language.
Yeah.
To serve underserved communities. But do you guys agree with this idea that bad news sells?
Yeah.
If it bleeds, it leads. You know, that whole mindset.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I don't know if we have an answer about why more of those stories don't get on the air. I have personal theories. I think we call it the inside term. I think is we call it solutions journalism, right? Pointing to things that work so that other people can replicate what's going on at your school where they're handing out white coats. There might not inherently be any tension in that story, but there is drama, and there are great characters, obviously, and there's a narrative to be told there. We, again, not to toot our own horn, but we try to get those stories on the air. We've looked at Matt's Charter School, which is a stone's throw away from here on Com Ave. It's a public charter school that has high completion rates and is moving more and more kids to college. We're kind of one of the problems, I think, is that we're in this building, actually, and we're in this neighborhood that doesn't have much, it's pretty gentrified, and so we really got to get our reporters out more into the community, and one way we're doing that, a few months ago, WGBH News opened up a bureau in Dorchester, which is the largest neighborhood in Boston. In the media, it has a very bad reputation. It bleeds, it leads. Lots of stories come out of Dorchester, but if Dorchester were a city, it would be the 3rd largest city in New England. It would be Boston, Worcester, and then Dorchester. So we have reporters on the ground there, and I'll be stationed out of there for the next 2 weeks, charged with finding hopefully some positive community stories to come out of there. So we are trying, but I agree with you. Not enough of these stories are getting on the air.
Yeah. You know, from where I sit, and not so much in defense of not covering good stories, but I think that a good story has to have some tension. To tell a story without tension, I think bores people. That's my theory. So I was looking back at my notes about panel 2 when Dr. Karen Knapp was talking about partnerships, but the disconnect between schools, teachers, and kids' families. There's some natural tension there that opens the door to a great story, I think, about what gets in the way of those partnerships, why so many, or why some fail and why others succeed. I think that's a legitimate story that hopefully addresses the concern that, well, wait a minute, you've never told the story of a great partnership. I'd love to, if it gives me also the opportunity to tell the story of what didn't work, because I think that's constructive too. And you know, besides, I do admit that the negative stories, or the stories that people view as negative that we do, are often stories that the motivation, at least from a reporter's point of view, is we're going to expose a problem here that maybe, we're not the ones to solve it, but maybe somebody who listens or who's responsible for solving it does solve it. So exposing the problem, even though it all sounds like it's all negative, exposing the problem is part of the solution. Anyway, that's my little soapbox spiel.
I'd add one other thing onto that, and just like on a different aspect of it. And I think that there's a cynical answer to your question, and there's a positive side. And I'm happy that I've had an editor that I can bring a story to, and they'll say, "Wow, a positive story? That's great. That's interesting. Let's put it on the air." It's good to hear that. But there's also, speaking broadly about things that are not good in our business. Editors can be busy, and editors can tend to see things in certain narratives the way that they're used to seeing them. And if editors are also not from diverse backgrounds, they tend to see things in those narratives and plug them into those categories. So the one thing that I would encourage, and I hope I don't sound too activisty with this, is get your kids to go into journalism. Yeah, like we heard before about how solutions have to come from the communities, right? And that's the thing that I would say, to get more people of color, more people from these communities into our business and tell the stories ourselves.
Although, that raises a really interesting question about the kinds of reporters that are reporting on education and the fact that they're overwhelmingly not minority, not Latino or Black in particular. But do you need to be a Black reporter or a Latino reporter to cover a majority Black or a majority Latino school? I mean, I'm just throwing the question out there. Raise your hand if you think that if you're going to be covering a majority minority school, that you should be a member of that minority group. Anyone subscribe to that idea? Does it matter? Raise your hand if you think it doesn't matter. No. Does not. I'm sorry. Can somebody take the mic over there and tell us who you are?
Jay Stewart. I would say that in particular cases, it doesn't matter. But I think if you're looking at your talent pool as a news organization, it does begin to matter. So diversity of the storytellers matters overall. It may not matter for specific cases or content areas.
Yeah.
I think one thing to note on this topic is that these stories aren't just reported in a vacuum. That no matter the background of the reporter or the editor, our stories we do what we call audio edits. So we actually sit in a room with as many people as we can find, from our production assistant to the reporter, editor, and we listen to the story, and the reporter reads them out loud and plays the tape. And when something doesn't ring true, it usually catches in the reporter's throat as they're reading it. You can hear it when it doesn't work. And editors from all different kinds of backgrounds are listening to these stories. Our newsroom, I worked in Wisconsin, Vermont before coming back home to Boston, two of the whitest places on earth, right? So our newsroom is the most diverse newsroom I've ever been in. I don't know about you.
No, and that's why, exactly the reason you described is why it's so important to have a diverse newsroom, because you have those moments and somebody will say something that will come from outside your experience, and that's vital. That's why diverse newsrooms are important, not for being politically correct or like, we need diversity because it's morally good, although it is. It's because it makes our journalism better.
Right.
Yeah. There's a flip side to that. One of my first jobs in public broadcasting was Southern Arizona, Tucson, KUAT, the member station, University of Arizona. And I remember there were very few Latinos. And a third of Tucson at the time was Mexican American. Much of South Tucson, where families didn't speak English. And I remember the news director, where there was not a lot of diversity at the time, says to me, "Claudia, we need you to go cover the situation where there's some protests, some kid got shot, and so forth, that kind of story." And they said, "Why do you want me to go?" And because I didn't cover South Tucson, there was a reporter who was assigned to that area. And why can't so-and-so go? And they said, "Well, because you're Hispanic." And I said, "I'm not going to go. Train your reporter to report on that community. But I'm not going to go just because I'm Hispanic." I felt used. So I think there's an argument to be made that just because of your skin or because you speak 2 languages or 3, that it leaves, I guess I feel that it leaves newsrooms off the hook for not doing more to diversify. And you don't want to be manipulated that way, at least I didn't.
Yeah.
So there's that side to it as well. So hand right there. Okay, we've got about 7 minutes.
Oh no, there's an editor asking a question.
Hello.
Exactly. Yeah.
Boo, boo.
My name is Aaron.
We found one.
I'm the awful editor that they're talking about.
He's not that bad.
So I just wanted to introduce myself as the focus of their ire. The other thing is I would like to point out, I know this is not a session on diversity, but we are trying very hard to get into communities that are underserved. We're trying to hire people who come from diverse backgrounds. A lot of this is simply, Kirk and I just worked on a story that aired last week and over the weekend. The reality is, as you're talking about, we don't always know what we don't know if it is not our experience. And we had a real eye-opening conversation with a professor at Harvard University, a guy named Tony Jack, who talks about going from Miami to Amherst College, and just the differences. You know, I jokingly said, so you made it to Amherst College, so all was right with the world, right? You've reached the pinnacle of higher education, and he said no. There were things that Amherst doesn't know about his experience and his life and his needs. You know, and that was the first time I heard that. There are students who don't go away for spring break. You know, they don't go to Fort Lauderdale. They need somewhere to live. And so he brought up the fact that in the early 2000s, he was stuck at Amherst, in Amherst, Massachusetts, without any food because the dining commons closed, and without a place to stay for a little while because the dorm closed. So I guess I'm agreeing with everyone that we do need to bring more diverse people in, and we need to be open to these stories, even us awful editors.
So final question on this side? Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon, I'm Rick Burns. I want to come back to the whole question of tension in education stories and what stories people might be interested in, which stories are important. You know, one of the aspects of education that grieves me is the difference between the good schools and the bad schools, particularly in the urban areas. Because, and the story of the good schools is not given enough attention. There are a lot of schools, in fact, we heard today about what's gone on up in Lawrence with the number of schools that have gone from being 3s or 4s to 1s. The same thing is going on here in Boston. And the question that you guys really ought to be focusing on is why isn't more being done to bring the 3s and 4s and 5s up to 1s when it's possible to go and understand what's going on in the good schools, but it's not being done. And usually the reason why they are 3s or 4s is for personnel reasons and political reasons where they just won't step up and close the really bad schools. And that's a story you can tell, and it's a story that has tension. I'd love to hear your reaction to this.
I so wish that Boston school superintendent was here as he was last night at our dinner. I would love to hear his answer to that. I'm not disagreeing with you that that's a story. Hopefully that's a story that WGBH and that you know, the local papers are telling. Are you saying that you don't hear those stories about how schools are improving or not improving?
The fact that it's a political issue is not being talked about. The fact that the superintendent, the mayor, will not step up and to the problem. It just isn't being done. And some of it's because of the community. I mean, they don't want to step up to it. And it's really understood, but they're not talking about it. I mean, the education people aren't talking about it. The political people aren't talking about it.
Right.
I wish Bianca was here because she covers K-12 for us. At the higher ed level, just briefly on that topic, in terms of the focus on the good schools, we see it at the higher ed level. I mean, there's so much fascination in this country on elite college admissions and selective colleges. Frank Bruni from the Times calls it college admissions mania, right? Just focusing on those schools. There's a poll that came out of Gallup a couple of years ago that I always cite, and we try to bake it into our stories as much as we can, because it basically, there's a lot of questions about the value of higher education right now, and some really depressing polls out there. But basically what Gallup found was that those graduates who say they had a positive education or valued their education had formed one relationship with a professor and worked on a project for more than a semester. And it didn't matter where you went. And I talk to employers all the time in Boston who say, we have these Harvard graduates, and I don't know what they know how to do. I know that they were smart enough, well-connected enough, and probably wealthy enough to get into Harvard, but I don't know what they know how to do. And I think when I talk to my friends and my family, that was their experience. I had formed at least one relationship with my history professor, and I worked on a project with him for more than a semester. And a lot of the other stuff that happened in college is kind of blurry, to be honest. A lot of the courses I took, I don't remember. There's some neuroscience there to why I don't remember everything. But I think those are the kinds of stories we try to get at, and it's our challenge. So, yeah.
We've run out of time, and it's been a full day. Like I said, there's wine and cheese, and we are ready to wrap this up. Yes. Thank you. Thank you all.
Hear me? It's been an extraordinary day. No, sorry. Thank you to all of our speakers, to all of you for being here. We've learned a lot. We will continue this work. Please check out our website. We'll be streaming all of these presentations, and we hope to be thinking about what's next with all of you. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you to Carnegie Corporation for New York.